11th. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the meeting of the Board of Selectmen for March 11, 2014. I'm Dennis Cohane, the chairman. This is my colleague Tom Hurley, selectman, and Katie Conlon, selectman. Over here is our town administrator, Anne-Marie Fagan, and our executive secretary, Paula Rizzi. If I could ask you at this time to bow your heads, and we'll offer a minute of silence for Vinnie Tempesta, who attended our meeting last week and unfortunately passed away at the meeting. So we'd like to offer him a moment of silence for Vinnie. Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the future meeting dates. Members of the board, I think we have already agreed on March 18th, April 1st, April 8th, and April 22nd. Everybody still good with that?
That works.
Okay. I hope the public can understand how busy we are. We're having 3 meetings a month. Number 3 on the agenda is the approval of the payroll and vendor warrants. We have a motion.
Move approval of current payroll and vendor warrants.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
That's unanimous. Number 4 is citizen speak. Anyone here for citizen speak outside of the 40B proposals? No one here for citizen speak? Okay. Number 5, we're going to push off number 5, the public discussion on the 40Bs, just for a little while we bring up number 6 on the agenda, Curry College. I'd like to bring up Rich Sullivan, Bill O'Connell, and Kevin Burchell. Going to meet with the board and discuss the Yulin Rink. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you very much for having us this evening. Curry College is pleased to report on another year.
You can pull that closer a little bit. Yep.
Curry College is very pleased to be able to report on another year of operation of the rink. Just a little bit of background, the town and the college are in the 4th year of operating the Yulin Rink. The town received a 5-year permit 4 years ago, so there's 1 year remaining on the town's permit, which is scheduled to end April 30th of 2015. Curry College has been a rink manager since the inception, initially on a 3-year contract, then last year a 2-year contract, which is coterminous with the permit. And while the town has pursued a long-term arrangement with the DCR for the rink, since the inception of the permit 4 years ago, the current level of uncertainty regarding what will come of that effort is unknown. The town has not the DCR has not acted on legislation that was passed in 2011 that permits but does not require the DCR to lease the rink to the town on a long-term basis. Absent any developments to the contrary, the prudent operating assumption is that the DCR may resume control of the rink at the end of the permit period. Without a long-term arrangement, it precludes additional investment in the rink, is also an obstacle to a sustainable operation. That being said, the town and the college and its partnership have achieved many of its operating priorities and objectives. Number 1, the town of Milton and its citizens have not had any financial exposure related to the rink. By the end of the next operating season, the 5th season, the college would have invested over $500,000 in the rink, around $300,000, a little over $300,000 in operating losses that have been covered, and around $200,000 of capital improvements to the rink. The annual operating season for the rink has been extended by 25% over the season that the town enjoyed with the DCR. This has, among other things, allowed folks like Milton Youth Hockey to have their end-of-season tryouts for the following year at the rink, as opposed to having to do it out of town. The public skating hours have been extended by approximately 40% over what was previously provided by the DCR and has remained free of charge to the users. Customer satisfaction has remained a high priority while we've tried to attract additional users to the rink. Among the users we've been able to attract is a figure skating operation, which provides another source of activity for Milton and the surrounding community. The physical facility has been greatly enhanced, both aesthetically, it's a more pleasant place to be, but also functionally. And the operating deficits, which I mentioned, of roughly $300,000 over the 5-year period, compares to $300,000 a year that the DCR was operating when published reports said they were operating at the time that the town took over the rink. So they've been substantially reduced, but the structural deficit remains. What we believe needs to take place for a sustainable operation is making reasonable adjustments to the ice rental rates over time. Last year, we had recommended a rate increase. We again recommend a rate increase, the same amount we recommended last year. That will help a little bit towards the operating deficit. It will certainly not cure the operating deficit. In addition to a long-term sustainable, what is necessary for long-term sustainable operation is to be able to cover not only the operating deficits, but a reasonable amount of capital investment in the rink. Given the age of the rink, it's been approximately 15 years since its renovation, and the age of the equipment, such as the Zamboni, somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 a year is probably a prudent amount to plan on for capital investment. You convert that into an hourly rate, we're somewhere between $70 and $95 an hour short of a sustainable operation. The rental rates at the rink, as presented in the report to the Board of Selectmen, have not been raised at the Ullin Rink for 5 seasons. Our effective hourly rate is approximately $191 an hour. This compares to about $220 to $260 an hour at other outsourced rinks, a lot of them managed by Facility Management Corporation. And many of these rinks have had rate increases during the time that the college has operated the rink and the town has had the permit. And many of these charge for public skating. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Ullin Rink continues not to charge for it. Those rates I just mentioned are at outsourced DCR rinks. Private rinks in the area have hourly rates between $300 and $390 an hour. Again, as I mentioned, we recommend that the town pursue a rate increase with the DCR at the rates mentioned in the report of $15 an hour for not-for-profit and municipal youth hockey and $20 an hour for everybody else. This is consistent with the guidance that the Board of Selectmen received from the DCR Commissioner at the time that the town was evaluating its response to the initial RFP. Securing a long-term lease is also necessary to provide a structure for long-term investment in the rink. I understand that the town has continued to pursue this and is trying to negotiate terms that would be acceptable to the town. A third element of managing for sustainability would be working with the DCR to secure funding for potential improvements to the rink. We understand, as listed in the report, that other outsourced rinks over the course of the permit that the town has had have been provided with improvements. As I mentioned, the season has been extended. It now runs from the Tuesday after Labor Day, which is really the first day people start thinking about skating, and they want to start skating immediately. And that has been moved up from the second to third week in September under the DCR, and it now extends through the middle of April, which gets us to Little League season, and under the DCR it generally ended around St. Patrick's Day. The public skating hours that I mentioned that have been increased also, focusing on days when Milton Public Schools are closed to give the youth of the area an opportunity to take advantage of some recreational facilities, and that has been very well received over the last few years at the rink. So those are the highlights of the report for the last year, and looking forward to the next, and I'll be pleased to answer any questions.
I have one question. If you get the $15 to $20 increase, how much of a dent would that put in your losses?
Approximately $30,000. impact.
So you're
next year.
losing about 50 grand a year?
Yeah, if you look at the exhibit, this past year, the operating loss on a cash basis was around $61,000 and is budgeted at $83,000 for next year. So if we look at the budget for next year, it would be $83,000, so just over $50,000 still.
Okay, and this would knock 30 grand off?
That would knock $30,000 off the 80. So.
Okay. Tom?
Yeah, it was probably, we're probably pushing on a year now, close to it, since I met with the commissioner, with Walter Timothy, and we were supposed to come up with a proposal for a long-term lease. They were very amenable to a long-term lease. And I get very frustrated because we have not seen a proposal yet that will make a sustainable rink. And I'd just like to know where that stands. Has Carter been working with the town to come up with some kind of a proposal to present to DCR for a, because that's what they're looking for. They're looking for us to come to them and say, here's our plan. And without it, we've got a real short window. We've got a changing administration. Once that administration changes, that commissioner probably isn't here anymore. And, with him goes our 25-year lease. So I just want to know where we stand.
Okay. The college, as the rink manager, hasn't been directly working on a proposal to the DCR. We understand that the town was working on such a proposal.
I had asked Bill to work with Curry to try and come up with, because you guys have the numbers, we don't, and we need projections, we need 25-year projections, we got to decide what we need for capital improvements, make sure we get a rate structure that's gonna fund those things, and come up with something that, that the DCR can live with. They're looking for a small amount of rent, not a lot of rent, but they more than $1, and we just need a proposal. And it's just not going anyplace, and it's very frustrating.
Well, I'd like to ask Bill, if you want to come up, Bill. Where are we with the proposal?
I think the biggest part to that is what DCR told us is to use the Arlington lease as the example of what we would be doing. The Arlington lease has a fair amount of rent going back, plus all new physical pieces to the rink. It's a new rink, a new slab, new boards, new ice, new Zamboni, everything new inside the rink. And at the end of the 25 years, you turn it back over to DCR. That doesn't exactly seem that it's a very good deal for us to buy everything new, turn it back over to DCR. Even Arlington is not happy with that one. Arlington's very unhappy with the fact that they're buying new and they're building new and they're going to turn it all back to DCR. They won't own it in the end. And the rent that they have to pay on top of that. So it's kind of a catch-22 of which one do you keep? Do you keep Arlington's plan, or do you keep the plan that we're going on and piecing the rink back together again?
Well, my understanding at that DCR meeting was they would live with a rent somewhere between $10,000 and $15,000 a year. I mean, that's not outrageous. Certainly, you could build that into a fee. Arlington also seems to do whatever they want to do. They have their lease, and they just go ahead and...
But they have started paying the rent. They've already paid for the new slab, the new boards, the new roof. They didn't pay for the parking lot yet, but the parking lot's full of holes. It's in their budget to go and do those things, but it comes down to they're squawking over the issue of, you want us to pay rent, you want us to put in new. I don't want to get stuck in their bind of...
Well, I mean, then we should be making a decision. I mean, lay out the numbers, see what it would take to make it viable, and if it's not, then why are we wasting our time? Just turn the damn thing back now. I mean, if 25 years and putting stuff new in isn't palatable, then turn it back now. I mean, we're wasting our time.
But at the same time, when we took the rink originally, we had a letter from now Secretary of Energy and Environment that we could come back, when he was commissioner, that we could come back in a year and go for an increase in rate.
Right. And they reneged on that.
We've asked on that. This will be the third time, and each time it's no. Our lawyers won't let us. Well,
What's the reasoning for that?
their lawyers won't let us.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Why?
They just say that, they would have to change their whole way of, their way of charging across DCRs. They have if you look under DCR's legislation that creates them, there is a rate sheet for everything that they do, whether it's beaches, ski areas, rinks, anything DCR, camping.
Bill, when DCR had control of this, how much a year were they losing, approximately?
The numbers that were reported were, I believe, around 340,000 a year.
So it seems to me they'd rather lose 340,000 than let you guys lose 50 grand.
Well, the thing with DCR is the revenue retention model changed by administrative. So they're now allowed to keep 80% of the gross revenue into their budget from the rinks. So the bottom line doesn't matter that much to them. It's the top line that matters.
Well, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, it
Because
is.
it's 450 grand of taxpayer money versus 50 grand of your money.
Exactly.
I'd rather you lose your money, to be quite truthful.
But we clearly can't afford to continue to lose. Curry can't afford it, and the town can't afford it. So,
And I think what I'm hearing here is that the business terms need to be decided by the town, what's palatable to the town in business terms. The college can provide the financial information from the rink like we have
right,
been
we
doing.
need 25 years worth of performance, or at least 10 years worth of performance, and and see what kind of rates we need. If we want to pro forma in public a small charge for public skating, let's do that and get those performers done, so that we can come in with a proposal, that makes sense, and has a rate structure that's at least somewhat consistent with those $220, $230 an hour, rates, which presumably we should be able to do, you think, or?
What, in terms of?
If we could get up around 230 or 240?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I believe it's between $70 and $95 an hour more we would need in order to, based upon the configuration of the rink and what it's costing the rink to run the rink now, plus anticipated capital expenditures.
But some significant capital improvements could reduce some of those operating costs too, right?
I believe it's running pretty efficiently now. I mean, the significant ones would be, I believe the refrigeration system's cooling is undersized for the rink, and that probably has significant efficiency implications. So perhaps that could improve it, but those are major capital expenditures, as you mentioned.
Right. But if we ran it as an enterprise fund, and it had a break even, and Curry was the manager, it would seem to make sense.
And we have to be able to change that rate, because even Arlington's lease claims that they're going to keep to the same rates that we are.
But they don't.
We know they don't, but that's...
Yeah, we don't want to play that game. We want to come up with a proposal that's...
That stands on its own.
And I don't want to write it and
Exactly.
lie in the proposal, so...
Right. So we come in with rates that work. If they don't like it, then fine.
So can you put a pro forma together?
Well,
And with the help of Bill?
Well, I suggest that it be the town's pro forma that we provide information for.
Correct.
Because it's the town that I believe needs to make the business decisions on what it
Right.
can accept and can't accept. But we're certainly pleased to provide the detailed information to help with that.
Okay. And if we could get that done soon, Bill, because the DCR commissioner is a Milton, governor is a Milton, they're all gone in January. Let's take advantage of it,
Anything else?
Are we good on
Anything else?
I
this
think the
discussion?
only other
I think
part
we're
that,
good.
while while these guys are here, I know that one of the next items is submitting the letter to DCR asking for the rate increase. Just getting your support.
I will certainly support that.
I'll
I
support
gave
that.
you the letter in your packet.
I think we're missing page 2 of the letter.
Would that be the item 4, Exhibit 4?
It might be, well, there is an Exhibit 4 attached, but it looks like we may be missing a page unless, it just ends with these,
Yeah, does it just end with
It
Does
just
it
ends
extend
with
with the
your
5
signature,
bullet
put a
points?
signature to the bottom of that.
okay.
Okay.
It is basically the same letter as last year, right?
Just a few changes.
Yeah.
Is there a motion here?
I'll move to draft and sign the enclosed letter to DCR requesting rate increases for the upcoming hockey season, or upcoming skating season.
Second, I thought the letter looked good.
The motion was made and seconded. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thanks, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch. People here from 88 Wharf? Anyone here from 88 Wharf? Okay. We're just going to, this is the last one before the public hearing. We got a change of manager for 88 Wharf. You can sit right up here.
How you doing?
Hello. You could introduce yourself, please?
Sure, my name is Eric Buckley. I'm the new general manager over at 88 Wharf.
Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you.
And when does this take effect, Eric?
I would assume, as my general managership,
Yes.
that was a month and a half ago.
Okay. So who was the manager of record for the
Matt
last?
Sullivan,
Okay.
Matthew Sullivan, yes. He's also the general managing partner.
All right. Well, that's good news.
It is good news.
Yeah. we
So
wish-
any changes in store for 88 Wharf, or?
There are a lot of changes in store. Mostly it's just bringing it up to the standard where it should have stayed when it started, I would say. I think things got lost in the shuffle, and I think people rested, not speaking out of turn or against current ownership, but I think things just got lost in the shuffle. And people rested on their laurels, I would say. I think. That's the way I see it since I've been there anyway. I've operated a lot of places in the past 20 years, so
Yeah.
we'll hopefully bring it up to the standard where it should be and keep people coming, I would
Well,
say.
there seems to be a lot of buzz done around there. And,
I would hope so.
Yeah.
I would hope so. Word of mouth, does more than anything else.
Good.
Especially at this stage of the game, winning people back.
And I should say, I went there to eat about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and there's a relatively new chef there. The food was delicious. And
He's an award-winning chef. He was on Food Network for a couple of shows and worked at the Inn at Little Washington down in just outside of Washington, D.C. He brings a very good Italian-American, approachable, food, unpretentious, I would say, but very good.
yeah, it was good.
Are you making other changes, Eric, to your menu or to your
We are. We're
outdoor
going to have a
seating?
whole new wine list. The wine list will probably triple in size, I would say. We're going to have a new menu for the patio as well, different single bites, a tapas menu for the bar as well. So
Great.
a lot of changes in the works. It's really baby steps at this point, putting the operational part of it back together.
Well, it's a great location and a great restaurant, so we
It
wish
is.
you luck.
Thank you.
well done.
I'll move to approve a change of manager for 88 Wharf Restaurant from John Collings to Eric Buckley, and to forward the pertinent paperwork to the ABCC for its approval.
Second.
The motion was made and seconded. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Good luck.
Thanks so much, gentlemen.
See you down
And
there.
ladies, thank you.
Okay, now we'll go back to, first of all, I'd like to recognize Dan Cullinane, your new state representative from precinct 1 and 2. He's right over there. We'll go back to number 4, which is the public discussion on the 40Bs. We're going to start off with Randolph Avenue. And I'd like to bring up Bill Clark, our Director of Planning. Bill, do you want to, do you have a PowerPoint?
I do.
Give us an overview, and then we can have people up to ask questions.
I think one of the things that, we'll come back on that one, is under 40B housing, the income limits at 80% are listed here. What we have tonight are two 40Bs that the town has before it. We have Randolph Ave, which is an 8-acre site. We have 6.2 acres of upland. Current zoning is Residence A, it's 1-acre zoning. And why you're on a different page than I am, I have no clue. You're on an entirely different page than I am.
This happened the last time, too.
Yeah, it did. Well, same thing happened at the animal shelter.
Yeah, thanks. I'm on an entirely different page than what's up here.
Is that a page of anything?
Yeah.
Is this the one? Is this the one?
No. Where's this thing? Restart. As this thing warms up, the
Go to
Randolph
your
Ave
microphone.
project is,
Go to the microphone.
the Randolph Ave 40B is an 8-acre site. It's in Resident A. If you were to build single-family homes, that's 1 acre, one house per acre, 8 homes at the most. But there are wetlands in there, so you're down to 6. I know there were more wetland issues because of the wetland crossing, so I know that the planning board back in the early 90s came up with 4 homes. This new proposal is 3 buildings, 72 units, and they're all rentals. In that new project, there are, each building is going to be 9,813 square feet. There'll be 9 single bedrooms, 3 2-bedrooms, and 12 3-bedroom units in a building. 24 units to the building. That's 51 bedrooms per building, and each building will have a parking garage for 23 cars. We got Mike. Now we're on the right page.
Can you move it forward?
Is what?
Will it move?
No. I've never seen that one before. As we keep doing that, the proposed development out of the 72 units in the 3 buildings, I have 36 3-bedrooms, 9 2-bedroom, 27 1-bedrooms. The breakdown between the affordable and the markets are 27 3-bedrooms in the markets, 7 2-bedroom, and 20 1-bedrooms. The affordable units are 9 3s, 2 2s, and 7 1s. The size, a 1-bedroom is 820 square feet, 2 bedrooms are 1,090, and the 3 bedrooms are 1,308. If I change computers?
Anne Marie's was working earlier.
I'm ahead of it.
You want?
Try it down. That's okay. Try it down again. No.
Now moving forward.
It's stuck. It's the projector.
All right.
There's nothing I can do.
Just keep going, Bill. Okay.
The market rates on a 1-bedroom are $1,500 for one, 2-bedroom is $2,200, and a 3-bedroom is $2,400. The affordables on that same are $1,278 for a 1, $1,438 on a 2, and $1,597 on a 3-bedroom. I actually have pictures of the buildings, but basically what there is a paper street that is Meg Lane, Ashley Way. It goes in, and there's an 8-acre site. I have comments from the police chief, the fire chief, and the building inspector. We got them today, and you'll have them by the weekend. I know that Mr. Lynch and I are due to have our discussions before the end of the week.
Mr. Lynch being the
Joe
DPW
Lynch,
director.
DPW director.
Yeah.
Without the pictures, I'm kind of at a loss as to
How many
Next steps
how many
forward.
stories are the buildings, Bill?
3 stories, 3 floors with underground parking.
And of the 8.5 acres,
Yep.
how many acres are being used up with buildings and parking,
Uh,
approximately?
The typical building sizes is 98, the 29,374, the average height of a building is 34.6. There's 144 parking spaces throughout the whole project. And I don't have the answer to your question right off the top of my head for how much is left over for open space. I don't have it on this one.
Okay.
Bill, you got, there's 72 units, how many bedrooms in total? Do you remember?
There's 51 per building,
Okay.
3 buildings,
And how many parking?
153,
144.
144.
144 parking spaces for 150 bedrooms?
Yep.
Okay. Now, typically, does that seem tight?
In a 40B, no.
Obviously, for the town, it would be.
In a typical one, I would say no. There's 23 indoor parking spaces per building. You've got it. Here,
You got it?
that's it.
All right, start again.
This is my 8-acre site. 6.2 is upland, 1.3 is wetland. We have A zoning, so everything as of right would be 1-acre zoning. The proposal is for 3 buildings. It's all rental. All rental means that all 72 units, instead of the 25%, will count towards our subsidized housing inventory number, which will take us from 4.5, we're shooting for 10, or more than 10.
If you could, can you answer that question? What percentage would 72 units bring us to?
It will not put us to, it will not give us a complete 1%, it's about 0.9.
Okay.
Each building's 29,000 square feet. There's 51 bedrooms, so 153 bedrooms per. There's the breakdown as to how many market rates, how many affordables. Here is the size of the units and their rates. And the location. The location is one of, this is right on Randolph Ave, Randolph Ave being down the bottom, the DPW yard being the big gray space with the white roof on it. The white buildings here are the projected buildings. A little bit more. The boundary line for the whole project is something like, follow here, here, jogs, comes down, goes up, down, jogs, here, 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 and there'll be a new boundary line over here. That house down in the bottom will wind up having to give some of its land to the project above. This is what the building should look, are expected to look like.
Bill, can you go back one, what's that? It's like a fairway on the right-hand side. What is that?
Just green space, open space.
Open space, okay.
Bill, while you're still on that, obviously, everybody knows that there's only one access egress. Standards in terms of emergency egress?
I had that discussion with Chief Grant today, and his comment was he wouldn't be concerned about getting in or getting out with the existing road. I know that I've had a preliminary discussion with Joe Lynch, DPW Director, about potentially looping the water line in there. I'm not sure about the sewer line, but I know the water line could and should be looped through the site. When that happens, it would be into the DPW yard. If it goes into the DPW yard, we have the potential that it will all be on upland, so it's not going through a wetland. We have the potential to put in a gate through the DPW yard for public safety vehicles only. If we had that, fire trucks could go either way. The other issue in here is these buildings are all sprinklered. So fire really isn't that big an issue. If something happens, something catastrophic happened. I did talk with Chief Grant today, and we did talk about putting in, with locating the fire hydrants. We talked to the project engineer, and no issues there. We did throw on the table with the engineer the idea of potentially looping that through the DPW, which we still have to go back to Mr. Lynch and find out the viability and where and how and whatever. But if we come through with utilities like that, we'll make, it won't be a road. It would be a access point for the fire truck, the ambulance, the police to get in from a different direction.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking from the standpoint, even without a fire, just a hurricane or something and blocking that road off and you have a medical emergency, how are you going to get in?
And that's, when I said that to Jack, he came back with, he liked the idea of being able to go out the other way for his vehicles.
Bill, can you touch a little bit on, my understanding of 40B is a proposal is supposed to resemble what's in the neighborhood.
Yep.
So we have all single-family homes in that neighborhood, yet this is a 72-unit apartment complex. Why would the state accept this application?
I don't have the answer to your question, other than there are several two-families across the street on Randolph Ave. Those are the closest multifamilies in that neighborhood. I don't have any clue why
Right.
they came up with this.
But in your expertise, and I know you know a lot about 40B, just because there's a two-family across the street, why should they accept 72 units of rental in a residential home ownership neighborhood?
And they don't have to.
Right.
I mean, we can go back after the typology issue again. Supposedly, this project was working with Mass Housing Partnership on Mass Housing Finance, on working on the guidelines issue. I don't know why they pushed it to the multifamily.
Okay. And I think and we'll invite you up in a few minutes. I think the big concern here is two things, is wetlands.
Yep.
And access and egress from the property. How is anybody going to get out onto Randolph Ave here? When you leave Wallace and Golf Course, you're taking your life in your hands every time.
And there's more people here than probably at Wollaston.
Right.
You're right. Coming out of this site at from 7 to 8:30 in the morning and trying to take a left to go towards Boston,
Virtually
Right.
impossible.
it'll be hellacious. Coming back in the afternoon, you're watching the rearview mirror to take the right. Coming out of there in the afternoon and trying to take a left to go back to Boston, when that light changes on Reedsdale, it's not just Reedsdale that feeds it, it's Reedsdale, Randolph Ave, and coming out of East Milton. All three of those roads feed this. We did make that comment to the developer. I do know that they're doing a traffic study on the site now. I do know that they're looking at different methods, and I know one of those methods was putting loops in the front of the street to try to control the lights. I do know that they were talking with Mass Highway to try to work on the timing issue for the Reedsdale Road light and the Reed Street light. We have not seen anything.
So you're saying if a car is coming out, it'll trigger one of the two lights? Or maybe both?
One or both,
Yeah.
yes. There's something with the timing that would have to be adjusted, and that would trigger those lights so that it would give that
Right.
roadway a opportunity to turn up.
Has the developer talked about less units at all? Because to me, and this is how I make a living, is actually building these kind of things, not 40B, but condominiums. To me, this is just a ridiculous proposal. It's just too dense. You know, even half of it would be too dense, I believe. Have they talked about reducing the number?
Under the revised application, no. From the original application was 96 units in 2 buildings, and it was just rectangular buildings. These have a little more character to them. There's a little bit of, there's more to these buildings than what was originally proposed. These buildings are made to supposedly hide in the topography, so that if you're on Hillside Highland, if you're on Highland Street and you're looking back towards Randolph Ave, you wouldn't see the building because the building's built with the topography so that it pushes it down some.
Can you say that again, please?
Maybe.
Say that.
The building is meant to blend with the topography that's there now. It's supposed to be lower than the trees that are there. You've got a 35-foot building that is going to be built down. It's on the side of a hill. So one part of it is not going to, the basement level is not going to show on one side. So they're flat roofs so that you don't have more roofs sticking up.
Right, and we did walk the site, ladies and gentlemen. There was about 3 feet of snow. We all walked through it. Tom walked through with his shoes. And
Cold.
I specifically asked a question about the 2 buildings at the rear.
Yep.
Was the roof line going to be above the
Tree line,
the tree line? And they said,
pretty close.
I don't think this justifies it, to be quite honest. I think the
I
roof line.
think those trees are higher than
Correct.
they're supposed to be.
Right.
So how many houses would be impacted in terms of, on Highland?
I think the view here, I think, I don't know if these 2 are going to catch it because of the amount of trees.
Certainly the 2 to the left will.
These won't, these will. I know the halls will see it. There's just too much.
12 months a year.
They're going to see something out there. I'm not sure they're going to see. From their tennis court, they're going to be looking into a parking lot. The 2 houses that are on Reed Street, the new house that's in the back, they're absolutely going to see it. That's the one that's, this one? They're going to see it all the time.
Okay.
Okay.
Doesn't work.
All right.
Any other thing to add, Bill, before we start bringing people up?
No, that's it.
Okay. So why don't we take some questions and comments from the public, and then we can revert back to Bill again, and we can finish it up at that point. Okay? Thanks, Bill. What I would suggest, if you want to speak, come right up to the microphone, introduce yourself.
I think we have a list that's already
Do we?
started.
Okay, you want to give me that list, Bill? Thank you. John Whitten?
That's me.
John
Thank you,
Whitten,
Thank
okay.
you, Mr. Chairman.
If you can just introduce yourself when you come up, and your address, and then go into your point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening. My name is John Whitten. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Huggins and Whitten. We're in Newton and Duxbury, Massachusetts, Mr. Chairman. And, Mr. Chairman, just by way of background, I'm the town council for the town of Stowe and the town of Marion. I'm special counsel in 40B matters in Amesbury and Gloucester, Wareham, Bourne, several other towns, and I've represented well over 100 neighborhood associations in the Commonwealth litigating 40B projects. I lecture in 40B. I'm on the faculty of the Boston College Law School. I'm a land use planner. I'm on the faculty of Tufts University, and I've written a lot on the 40B process. I've litigated a lot of cases, including 4 at the Supreme Judicial Court, an awful lot at the appeals court, and a lot at the trial court. And I say that by way of background, Mr. Chairman, because I'd like to address one of your comments, which is why would Mass Housing approve this project? Mass Housing is a bank. They're in the business of issuing project eligibility letters. They rarely say no. But respectfully, Mr. Chairman, I'm here this evening representing Joe Lombardi, who is an abutter to the project. He was one of the homes that will have a permanent view of this proposal.
Mr. Whitten, can I just ask a question?
Of course.
When you say they're a bank, you think they're lending the state's money, correct?
Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. They serve as a subsidizing agency in some cases. They serve in other cases as the project administrator for the New England Fund banks. And in this case, we're never quite sure. It looks as if Mass Housing would be serving as the project administrator, and the subsidy money would be coming from the New England Fund.
Okay.
But the applicant could always apply for a rental project under the low-income housing tax credit program. So we don't know at this stage.
All right.
Mr. Lombardi is a direct abutter, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, and I'm here this evening representing him. This is one of those cases where Mass Housing could say no, and we'd urge respectfully the Board of Selectmen to have Mass Housing say no, because the project eligibility letter that the applicant seeks is a ticket. It's a ticket to the Board of Appeals. No ticket, no application to the Board of Appeals. So it's important, respectfully to the board, that the selectmen tell Mass Housing how you really feel about this, because it is possible that Mass Housing would deny the ticket. And the reason, Mr. Chairman, first and foremost to deny the ticket is this property is restricted by a deed restriction in terms of one of the sales that the applicant has cobbled together in terms of multiple parcels. This was a transaction from Mr. Mr. Kingston, who is an abutter to the property, and that deed specifically states that the land shall not be used for commercial purposes and references that it shall be allowed to be used for single-family dwellings pursuant to the zoning in 2005. And in 2005, this district, as Mr. Clark stated, was regulated as single-family district for minimum lot size of 1 acre. That deed restriction has not expired. It was written in 2005, so at a minimum, it's good for 30 years and renewable for another 20 years. And while I'm not here representing Mr. Kingston, this restriction directly affects my client. So first and foremost, we would ask the Board of Selectmen to inform Mass Housing that the property is restricted against the very project that the applicant seeks. And most notably, Mr. Chairman, if you look through the applicant's material, they cite all the deeds that cobble this parcel together, but don't include the deed with this restriction. They make reference to it as Exhibit A, and I have the deed, and I'll hand the board a copy of that deed, but they don't include the actual restriction itself.
In your experience and expertise in 40B, have you seen 40B supersede deed restrictions?
No. I mean, one of the things about the comprehensive permit law, as powerful as it is, it doesn't supersede private restrictions. So an interest in land of A sold to B cannot be superseded by the Commonwealth, unless the Commonwealth were to take it by eminent domain, and we're not suggesting they would.
Just one other question. Would it have been possible, and did anybody check, could that deed restriction have been lifted upon the sale of the property? Or you see no evidence it was?
No, there's no evidence that that restriction is not still in full force and effect, and I've spoken to Mr. Kingston, and he's provided me permission to tell the board that I've spoken to him. I spoke to him as early as today and as late as last week, and it's his understanding, and I believe he's written to the board, he's provided testimony to the board, it's his belief as to the purpose of the restriction, and there's no evidence that it's been lifted.
Great, okay.
Yeah, okay, no.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So that's the first point, and I have a letter that I'd like to submit to the board, and I'll be brief because I know you have a busy
Okay,
agenda and a lot of
yep.
people that want to speak. That's the first point and maybe the most fatal to the application. But the second fatal issue, and one that we'd ask the Board of Selectmen to comment to Mass Housing, is Mass Housing's made a big deal of their so-called smart growth scorecard. And we hear it, that new development should comply with this notion of smart growth. Well, I teach in that area, and I can tell you this isn't smart growth. When I did the scorecard, the score is 0. They don't meet any of the scorecard requirements. It's not walkable to a town center. It's not cluster development. It doesn't preserve open space. It doesn't do any of the criteria that Mass Housing requires as part of the smart growth scorecard. So if Mass Housing is going to hold out this standard, at least Mass Housing should be accountable to it. And we'd ask the Board of Selectmen to kind of review it with that in mind, and I provided the board with the indicia that Mass Housing says is how you score well on the scorecard. And I think the Board of Selectmen know this parcel far better than I do. You're going to find that the score, in fact, is 0. The other 2 points, very quickly, Mr. Chairman, is this parcel, as the board so well knows, is encumbered by wetlands, requires a wetland fill, a wetland crossing. The applicant's going to have to argue that it's a limited project under the Wetlands Protection Act, but yet at the same time, the applicant has asked for a waiver of the local Milton bylaw, wetlands bylaw. That just doesn't make much sense. If this parcel is so constrained that it needs a waiver from the local bylaw, and it has to use a deed-restricted portion of the parcel, I think the chairman's comment is right on, which is it's too much on too small and too constrained a parcel. And then the last comment, Mr. Chairman, and there's more detail in our letter, the site is poorly planned, and it goes to this notion of smart growth scorecard. You put 3 large buildings, square buildings, on a parcel with no design criteria. In order to get to the open space, you have to pass a parking lot or pavement. There's no abutting property to the open space, and the entirety of all the buildings are surrounded by pavement. That's not good planning. It's not good site planning, it's not good design. I think the aesthetics we leave up to the board's good judgment, but as the chairman noted, it is not at all true, this depiction in the applicant's material, that the project would be screened by the height of that vegetation. We know it's not true. Mr. Clark pointed that out just in the schematic, but we'd ask the board to comment to Mass Housing as well. It's too much on too marginal a parcel, and in addition to it simply failing to meet the smart growth scorecard. So, Mr. Chairman, I have a letter on behalf of Mr. Lombardi that I'd like to submit. I also have the deed restriction that I've referenced,
Good.
and I'll provide a copy to Mr. Clark as well.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Whitten.
Mr.
We
Chairman.
really
Just
appreciate it.
one other question, Mr. Whitten?
Of course.
In terms of the smart growth, which I do agree, it's not really a tremendous smart growth area. We had another 40B project that up on the other side of Milton, which was even less of a smart growth, and that got its site eligibility letter. Is there any way of writing it such that, I mean, is there any trick to writing it to get across the point of smart growth?
Well, that's an excellent question. And on behalf of the town of Marion, we sued Mass Housing. We went all the way to the appeals court, and the appeals court ruled that Mass Housing can't be sued, that they are an entity unto itself, and you can't sue Mass Housing. The only way to get to Mass Housing is through the Housing Appeals Committee, which of course is a done deal once it gets to the Housing Appeals Committee. So I can't answer that question. I am familiar with that project eligibility letter. It's very disappointing on many levels. I don't know how you make an institution abide by its own policies, because in this case, the scorecard literally is 0. That's why, on behalf of my client, I would urge the Board of Selectmen to focus on the deed restriction, because mass housing, even the mighty mass housing, can't ignore a private property restriction. So to issue the project eligibility letter for a project that can't be constructed would seem to be a waste of the Commonwealth's resources. So it's an excellent question. I can't answer it. We have seen mass housing time and time again issue project eligibility letters that defy common sense. But I think in this case, the deed restriction really gets to the heart of the matter.
Great.
Thank you, Mr.
Mr.
Chairman.
Whitten, is it your plan to submit a comment letter to Mass Housing on behalf of Mr. Lombardi?
Well, yes, and I'd say the reason we first would rather submit it to the Board of Selectmen is under Mass Housing's policies, they really don't listen to the public, they listen to the Board of Selectmen. So we will send this letter to Mass Housing, but frankly, in my experience, they'll listen to you as the chief elected officials. They're not necessarily going to listen to the public. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Whitten.
Thank you, members of the
Appreciate
board.
it. Michelle Kelleher, you want to come up? Okay, all right. Let me put it this way. Anyone else want to speak? Okay. Hello.
I'm Henry Carr. I live on Brushel Road, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 10. I just asking a question. This is from the Milton Times article from last Thursday. It says a proposed 72-unit apartment could add 348 new students to Milton school enrollment and might possibly also cause to need a new school, according to Dennis. But
Well, if I can,
how do you get
okay.
that many
That's a good
students
question.
from?
I can answer that. I was misquoted. What I meant was if 276 units go up on Brushel Road, 77 units go on Hillside Street, 72 units on Randolph Ave, 57 down on the Henry site, we're going to need a new school.
Okay, because
Not from one project.
that's what I didn't
Okay,
understand,
yeah.
and just said that's like 4.8 students
Right.
per unit, so, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening. You
My
just-
name is
yeah.
Kerry Choi. I and my family have lived at 23 Wildwood Road for the last 33 years. I have great affection for the town and its neighborhood. I find the people and the elected officials to be good people, respectful of the town and its neighborhood and the future of the town. In the 33 years I've been here, I've only had to address the selectmen on 3 topics when I feel that there is a grave threat to the town or the neighborhood or any neighborhood, and that the threat is needless and it's not being vigorously met. And I find myself in that situation again because of this proposed 40B project. I have tried to read up on, smart development. And in my own halting way, I'm not an expert in this area, this project is totally incompatible with the neighborhood. And then I went over the application process, and I found that there were numerous misstatements, inaccuracies, obfuscations, stretching of the truth. For example, they assert that one of the positive attributes of this location is that they're in walking distance to shopping. The only thing they could possibly mean is that you could go out on the avenue and walk down to Tedeschi's assuming, you know, that if you had kids with you, you'd have to have only 2 kids because you'd have to hold their hands with the traffic there. They say they're in walking distance to public transportation. I assume that means you can go out on the road and walk down to the corner bus stop. The application is so misleading and inaccurate that it makes me believe that the developer is intentionally trying to mislead the town and the state regarding the compatibility of this particular project in the town. I am well aware of the need for affordable housing. At the same time, the positive attributes of our town deserve jealous protection by the selectmen. I see serious problems with traffic. I see serious problems with surface water. Where is all this surface water going to go? That hasn't been addressed by anything I've seen or read. There are serious environmental issues, and I still don't quite understand whether the chief of the fire department is saying that he is fine with one access or not. We don't have a clear answer to that right now. Certainly seems from a common sense standpoint that one access to this type of dense development would create all sorts of serious public safety hazards. Mr. Whitten has stated more succinctly and from a much better knowledge base many of my concerns. I just expressed them as a concern, a resident, and I'd like to close by just asking the selectmen to please be jealous guardians of the integrity and the wonderful attributes of our town, not only for our residents now, but we are the benefits of past selectmen who have jealously guarded the positive attributes of our town, and I ask you to do that for the young people in the town also.
Thank you, Mr. Choi. Appreciate it. Hello.
Thank you very much. I haven't actually sat before the board of selectmen before. You can probably tell by my accent that I'm not from around here. My name is Mike Fitzsimons. I'm married to Suzanne Francis, who is actually...
I'm the guy with the accent.
Suzanne has been a long time member of the Milton community and was born and lived here, and ultimately convinced me to move. And I've truly fallen in love with the community and the town of Milton. But I do have several concerns, and my first concern primarily comes from the fact that the developer did not actually appear before this committee tonight to actually do a good presentation and show about the entire impact of this particular environment. And what concerns me is that this may demonstrate the commitment that the developer is actually going to have to our community. Because granted, whatever may go in there will become part of our community. I'm also very concerned to look at the traffic. You know, what was pointed out was that there's 3 houses that are basically impacted by this. Well, I would actually argue there's a lot more than that. There's every single house that's located on Reed Street and Highland Street. And hey, those roads are already busy as it is. They're very under-repaired. There's a lot of damage. And I tell you, just last night, my wife and I were out there cleaning the garbage that for some reason, with how busy that road is, seems to end up in our yard. And make no mistake, when these people leave this development, they're going to be taking a right. I mean, they're intelligent people. There is no way you can safely take a left there. They're going to take a right. They're going to turn down Reedsdale. They're going to turn down Clifton Ave or continue down Highland, and it is going to increase the amount of traffic we have significantly. And I think that the selectmen need to consider actually hiring an independent individual to come in and really look at the traffic impact that actually occurs from an unbiased standpoint, because it is going to add cost. And there are no sidewalks on Reed or on Highland from Clifton on up. The other is, I actually had the opportunity last night to go walk through this property when I got back from work, and it is beautiful property. I mean, there's multiple deer tracks there. You know, you can tell by where the snow's been trampled down, where the snow's gone, and of course by all the deer poo that pretty much is there too. But there's a lot of wetlands, and we can't underestimate these wetlands. In fact, I think everyone that basically has lived on that hill probably 2 years ago suffered quite a bit from the amount of poor drainage that already exists without actually going in and building underground parking, without building a road. And theoretically, can you really divert a wetland? I'm not really quite sure you can. So again, these are just a couple of examples that concern me as an individual that lives over there, but also as a member of the Milton community. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry, what is your address?
214 Highland Street.
Thank you. Anyone else? Hello.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Jonathan Hall. I'm at 320 Highland Street. I speak for my wife Karen as well, though she doesn't always let me speak for her, but on this occasion she is allowing me to. Mr. Chairman, thank you for hearing from us, and members of the board, we do appreciate it. I'm not an abutter, but I am an abutter to an abutter. The tennis court that we heard from with a nice view of this project is, I'm right to the left of that tennis court, so just kind of beyond those trees. Yeah, if we widened out a little bit, you'd see it. This is a project that we feel on our street is not smart growth, but dumb growth. I mean, it's asinine that anybody would think this would work in this neighborhood. The reason we moved to Milton is because of the character of the community, and I certainly think that you should be protecting that character, and you can do that with a strong voice to mass housing. We understand the vagaries of this law of 40B, and it's sort of out of your hands in some ways, but you can have an impact at this early stage, and we would be very hopeful that you would do that. When we moved in, our biggest problem with the street was getting out of our driveway, and we're right at the corner of Reed, and people came screaming up there. There's a stop sign there now because we pushed for it. But we almost got hit just about every day, and it was a constant danger. I can only imagine that with people turning right on Randolph Ave out of this project, cutting up Reed in the morning where it's one way, do not enter, but the police stop patrolling it for a reason I won't get into. You've got a ton of traffic going up there already, screaming around that corner, and it's going to impact negatively our lives on that street. So I would urge you to take a real strong look at this idea of getting an independent counsel. I mean, we pay a lot of taxes. If there's any way we could get some help, some beef behind this objection that we have by independently looking at traffic, looking at environmental impact, looking at the fiscal impact of the town, building a school or hiring police officers, bringing in extra firefighters, we would urge you to do that. Amen to Attorney Whitten. Thank you for your presentation. I thought it was terrific, and I think the point he brought up about the deed restriction is a very good one. Yep. So thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks, John.
Thank you.
Hello.
My name is Elena Stoeva, and this is my husband, Gordon Larvey. So we moved to Milton just last year. My address is 15 Reed Street, which is not the house directly to this development.
But certainly in the sight line.
Yes. So we already touched upon traffic concerns. This is number one for us since we ourselves, the first time we had to reach our home, we said about 30 minutes, maybe a mile away from our home. And then we decided we need to study the map and find ways to go around in order to reach 15 Reed Street. And it was through streets that every single summer night there were kids playing and parents will be waving to slow down. Even though I'm not a fast driver, I'll always be slowed down by a parent. And I can't even imagine what will happen after all these people get in, and we will continue taking these side roads as everyone else will start to do that as well. Another concern is the wildlife. We have 4 deers. There were 2 when we moved in, and they multiplied in front of our eyes. And I can't even imagine where these deers would find food and how they will survive when the wetlands are removed. And we see them every single day. Also, we have 2 families of geese. They are turkeys. They are, I think one of them has 12, the other 11 or something like that. My husband counted them. They usually cross their path right behind our house. They always get into a fight for their territory, which I'm not a biologist, but makes me believe that they need a lot of territory to survive. And probably there are a lot of other wild animals that will be affected by this decision. Also, I wanted to touch upon the schools that was mentioned before. We're expecting our first child, and it will be very, very stressful to know that there's so many new inhabitants, and knowing if we'll find the right place for us. Since we just moved here, one of the reasons primarily for the Milton school system that we've heard so much about it is just devastating. Is there anything else? I think we touched on it. Traffic, I just I don't see any. Unless there's a couple of, or a highway built, I don't see any solution. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but I really don't see any solution to the traffic. So, yeah, I think that's all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, anyone else? Hello.
Hi, everybody. Gregory Dolan, 39 Clifton Road. We have 3 children. We've been there since 2006. So I look at the project from behind, and I agree that the representation of how these buildings will look proportionally, the 9,800 plus square feet each, even the biggest houses up there are 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. It'd be 2.5 times the size. And we're looking at it across this way. And it's just, like they're saying, it's too big for the space that's in there. Second of all, that Clifton Road, we live at the bottom where gravity and momentum come together against us. I second the traffic concerns. We literally have to stand in the street on a regular day, 5:30 in the afternoon, so the children can ride the bicycles. And I mean moment to moment, watching both ends, because a lot of people are way too fast through there already. But third, it sounds like the property at the corner was just sold by the church. So the general idea of having 2 massive construction projects underway at the same time, we're hoping you'd have the foresight to see, a year from now, 2 years from now, when the whole place, if both of those go through at once, that begin, I mean, in addition to the impact that the people have already talked about, I don't need to be redundant. But thank you for listening.
Okay, thanks, Greg. Anyone else? Hello.
I am James Jackson. I live at 179 Clapp Street, just at the corner there, so I'm not in any way affected by this. I moved to Milton about 4 or 5 months ago. Before that, I used to live in Brockton, at an apartment complex on the west side of town near Route 24. About 6 or 7 years back, FedEx, or is it either FedEx or UPS? Well, now it's both of them. FedEx came to the city and said they wanted to build a site because there are wetlands similar to this behind the apartment complex. So they were very sketchy. in terms of presenting what they would do, how it would affect the wildlife, so on and so forth. So eventually they built it, and what had happened was the wildlife that was in that wetlands that was previously, undisturbed, or every now and then maybe you'd get a wild fox running across the parking lot, something like that. The sightings multiplied. The rabbits that live back there, all the wildlife, they started moving into the complex that I was in and started residing there. Now, there are a lot of young kids there, and on top of that, you also have a very fluid workplace where there's people coming in at morning, afternoon, so people leaving in the evening and coming back in the morning. So the wildlife that was recently at the site where FedEx is now, were moving into the complex, and the fact that their food source and living space were cut off as well, started moving into the complex, and then next thing you know, you have geese running out in the middle of the night. Someone can't see them long enough, fast enough. They hit them. You got a dead geese, or you have a couple of raccoons that get a little too close to the apartment complex, and children are very curious, and the next thing you know, one's getting bit. And on top of that just opens the door to another development as well, because the next thing you know, there's also a UPS site back there now that was previously on South Main Street, Brockton. I don't think anyone's familiar with Brockton. They moved over there because ooh, free land. So then, so I know that the wildlife would definitely be affected. I can preach to that. Number two, I think that everyone's echoed this concern. It's not smart growth at all. These three units are just way too compact, and I think that the parking and the traffic, we're right off of Route 28 and Riesa Road and Canton Ave. Those are busy roads enough, let alone if you add another 72 units. You have families coming in here, they have children, and those families have friends, and hey, we have a dinner party. Next thing you know, it's just more traffic on the roads that this town cannot handle. I've only been here a few months, but I can already tell you that that's probably not the best idea. So I just wanted to add that, just wanted to come to the board today and just say that yes, everyone's concerns are valid, and I've seen that happen in Brockton. I used to wake up to turkeys just in the parking lot on a summer day, so the wildlife will be moving into human populated areas. So if this development were to go through, doesn't seem like it will be, but I don't know that because I'm not mass housing. Where's that wildlife that lives there is going to go? The deer that the lady previously mentioned, where are they going to go? They're going to move into the yard, into the streets, off Dorado Avenue. So thank you guys for listening.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Anyone else? Anyone else want to talk to Randolph Ave? That's it? Okay. I can open it up to the board members if you want to make comments.
I think, I don't want to speak for the rest of the board, but I don't feel that this is smart growth, as Mr. Whitten said. It is too dense. The traffic's going to be outrageous. So, I don't think any of us are in favor of anything this dense in that area. That being said, I am an advocate for affordable housing in the town. I think the town does need affordable housing. We need to pass that housing production plan, and we need to have a plan for controlled affordable housing as opposed to 40B developments that we have very little control over. And I've been saying this for a long time, that the way to get sustained good affordable housing growth is through being proactive about it, not being reactive. And unfortunately, we've been reactive for quite a few years now. So.
Okay.
Not specifically. I know Bill is working on our draft response letter, and I'm sure I'll be working on that and going over the comments and adding to it. So I think it would probably be in our best interest to continue now with the next 40B and hear from the people who are here for that one, for Henry's.
Okay. And the comments we heard tonight, I wrote down some of the bullet points, and correct me if I'm wrong, or you can add them if I didn't write them down. But density, People talked about schools, the impact on the schools, wild animals. A big one was traffic, concerns on Reed Street in particular. Someone mentioned that we should hire an expert in 40B. We even heard about dumb growth, which I believe that this is dumb growth instead of smart growth. I thought a very valid point was that we should hire our own traffic consultant versus relying on the developer's traffic consultant to give us the impact on traffic trying to get on to Randolph Ave. And I believe the board will go along with that. It upsets me that the vegetation behind the buildings is not accurate. I know it's not accurate because we walk the land. We talked about wetlands and we talked about smart growth, but I think the most important one, as Mr. Whitten pointed out, and it's the one that maybe we can hang our hat on, is the deed restriction. And one of the points that Mr. Whitten mentioned was, in the application, the deed was just referenced to. It wasn't included in the package, which leads us all to believe that they know the deed restriction is there and hoping that somebody may not see it. But now it's exposed, and we will be putting this in our letter. We will be dealing with John Flynn, our town council, and we will be dealing with Bill Clark, our director of planning. And over the next couple of weeks, we will be putting a letter together. So bear with us. And I want to thank you all for coming for the Randolph Ave. And next up, we're going to have the Henry's Building. So if there's anybody here for the Henry's Building, we'll bring you up in a few minutes. Bill is going to put up the PowerPoint.
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting for Bill's presentation to be set up, maybe we should just mention that anyone who is not here tonight who's watching on TV who would like to submit comments, they can still email them to us. Any of us, or to Bill Clark or Emery Fagan or Paula Rizzi, contact anyone in the Selectman's office, and we can still continue to take comments from the public.
That's a good point. Thank you, Katie. Are you all set, Bill?
I am.
Okay. All right, go ahead. This is...
It's the Hendry's Building, 131 Elliott Street. The total site is 35,525 square feet. The proposal is 57 rental units, 49 two-bedroom, 8 three-bedroom. Their proposal is 26.32% affordable, 13 of the two-bedrooms and 2 of the three-bedrooms. There are 75 proposed parking spaces, 66 under the building and 9 in the adjacent court. That's a 1.3% cars per unit. This is part of the site plan that was submitted. Actually comes out okay. It's terrible on this screen, it's okay on this one. What we have is Elliott Street on the left, we've got Central Ave on the bottom, and the rectangle down here in the bottom right-hand corner is the town-owned land, and the sliver on top would be the unknown owner land. This is the underground parking, which is a little bit bigger than the building itself. This is part of the presentation that, or part of the application that they submitted, maybe see it a little bit better. This is the layout of the first floor. The project is, again, 35,525 square feet. The building coverage is 56.49%, or 20,000 square feet of the lot. The open space to the land would be 19.28, 6,848. The breakdown of the bedrooms, or the units. There are 44 standard two-bedrooms. There are 5 accessible two-bedrooms, 3 standard three-bedrooms, and their so-called west wing three-bedroom units. There are 4 of those. The size of the units A two-bedroom standard is 1,132. Better. The two-bedroom accessible is 1,362. The three-bedroom, 1,354. And the largest unit in there is what they call the West End units. They're 1,475. You can see what the rates are for the markets. You can see what they are for the affordables.
Bill, could you explain what accessible means? The two-bedroom accessible?
Accessible would be handicap accessible. I'm sure that it has to do with the way the walls are constructed, that you'd have more places for, you'd have wider doors, you'll have more places for bars, primarily wider doors. Here's a schematic of what the building is expected to look like. If you look at the bottom picture, you'll see where the two garage units are. This is what, the bottom picture is facing Elliott Street, is standing on Elliott Street looking at the building. The top picture is standing on the tracks and looking at the back of the building. Here's one taken from the Ed O'Neill stone across the street by the repair shop, looking up Elliott Street. You see Esprit de Vin on the left. What they did here is they took their building and superimposed it over an actual photo, which still has the town's building still up in this photo. There is a comment in their application about having 3 stories, stepping up to 4, stepping up to 5, and this is the example. This would be looking from the residential area on Elliott Street, looking down into that building, looking east. This would be looking from the trolley tracks, looking west. In this case, they've actually taken out what would have been the town building, and there's a parking lot there, but it superimposes their building on that space. And that's actually it. So we'll go back to, here's their building.
Okay. I know there was controversy before, Bill, over the height of the building. Is it 4 stories or is it 5 stories, the proposed one right now?
Their application says that it's 5 stories.
Okay.
It's 3, 4, and 5 stories, and the highest point being 5.
And can you repeat again how many parking spaces are proposed? 57 units.
There are 75 parking spaces, 66 under the building, and 9 in the courtyard adjacent to the building. I haven't really figured out where that courtyard is, but that's the application statement, that there are 9 outdoor spaces.
Okay.
And where would they propose to access the parking, from Central or from Elliott?
From Elliott. If you look at the bottom picture, you'll see the garage doors down on the right. Actually, this actually shows the new building.
Okay.
So it's way down here, just outside of the corner.
Great.
Actually,
You're at the stop sign, basically?
I think it's kind of just below where the tree was.
Okay. You all set, Katie?
I'd prefer to open it up to comments from
Okay,
the public.
yeah,
at
we'll
this
open it up
point.
to comment. Does anybody want to? Yeah, Keith, come on up, Keith.
Good evening.
Hi, Keith, all right.
If that doesn't scare the hell out of you, I don't know what would, huh?
If you could just identify yourself and your address, please.
Keith Mills. I live at 39 Hawthorne Road, and I have that really little building over there to the left, 25 Central Esprit de Vin. It's interesting that they chose to depict their building as white. I think it makes it look a little bit more friendly. To me, it almost looks like Darth Vader kind of hanging over the square there. I think one of the issues is, or I'm curious and they're not here, is, first there was this 36 condominiums that they wanted to do, and now all of a sudden we're looking at 57, 40B units. Now I think, affordable housing is a really good idea. I just don't know if we need 57 units right there at the corner. This is kind of a new and developed area here. We were one of the first stores here, new stores here 12 years ago, and kind of like the way that it's been flourishing. There's been discussion about, this area kind of developing for commercial use as well, and according to the proposal that I've seen so far, there's nothing along those lines. I just think the building is just way too tall for the neighborhood. I mean, it's 5 stories if you're, on Elliott Street, but it sure looks like 6 stories when you're on Central. And considering there's nothing even close, to that type of height, it just, I just can't figure out how it works. As a result, I think the density just makes it just overwhelming. Traffic really has never been addressed. And I can remember initially when they hired their own people to provide a traffic study for the 36 condos, it was almost borderline that it was going to be a little tight then. Well, now we've upped it, 21 units, and, supposedly it's going to be better. I don't buy that at all. And I guess, I would like to see that, that an independent study is being done, traffic study, for the town, but at the cost of the developer. I don't see why the town should have to pick up a tab on something like this. This is crazy. It's also just so darn close to the street. I mean, it's like hangs on the street. And I wonder, where the egresses are. I mean, is it like right into my building, or is it the next building over, which is actually, a driveway? And also, if you have a, egressing out there, I don't know how many parking spots you lose just by people trying to go in and out. And I don't know if anybody's been down there lately, parking's become quite a premium there. And I think it's great, with the new restaurant there, the condominiums with the shops in there. I think they've really added to the neighborhood. I just don't see, where this is added. And again, I can't say it enough, parking. I mean, as much as people want development, and I think it's good, and smart development is good, we still can't forget that parking is difficult. I guess it would have been nice if the developer was here, and it just, it kind of appalls me that, again, this is something that he's chose not to come here.
Actually, Keith, his attorney is here if you want to. We can ask questions to his attorney in a while.
Again, I just, it bothers me that, the neighborhood's never been met with, any negotiations that almost seemed like it worked out, never worked out. And I guess I just would want the selectmen, to remember, and I hate to bring up the tree, but we had a really nice tree there. There was discussion about keeping it, and then it was unilaterally torn down because of safety issues. Well, I can't remember the last time the sidewalk's been shoveled over there, or during the season the grass has been cut, or the bushes have been taken care of. So if we're telling us that, it's okay to cut down a 200-year-old tree for safety, but not, clearing the sidewalks or anything around there, I find that shocking as well. Again, I'm not against 40B. I think affordable housing is a really good idea. And I think if this building was scaled down smaller, it would fit the neighborhood better. I don't think we need a 6-story building around there where it's not even close to anywhere near that height for any building around there. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Keith. Anyone else want to comment? Peter?
Good evening. I'm Peter Jackson. I live on Capon Street, and I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 2. First, I want to thank the selectmen for conducting this public hearing. It really gives you a sense of the flavor of the town and their response to these big projects, and and the impacts they could have. We know we've got to deal with the issue of affordable housing, and it's a difficult one, and the 40B program gives developers a lot of power and a lot of leeway to do things that otherwise we might not find to be in our best interests. Mass housing in the 40B program is very difficult to deal with, and you can't just say you don't like it. That's not enough to get anywhere. You really have to look at their guidelines and look at their design criteria and, you know, deal with their own language and their own guidelines as a way to address it. And even then it's difficult. I think one of the most important things that the board points that the board can make in their response to mass housing is the effort that's happened on this site in the past. The town of Milton has been planning for and implementing the revitalization of the Central Avenue Business District for 15 years. And at that time, the Board of Selectmen established what was the predecessor to what is now the Milton Village Central Avenue Revitalization Committee to plan for and advise the town on appropriate initiatives to revitalize this important commercial area and important neighborhood. In the intervening years, there have been several actions that to further this planning initiative. 2 studies by the Urban Land Institute Technical Assistance Team made recommendations relative to potential physical improvements and rezoning initiatives. The Planning Board developed a PUD overlay for the Milton Village and Central Avenue through a public process, including the affected property owners, and were successful in gaining adoption of this bylaw at the town meeting. With the support of our legislative representatives, the town applied for and was awarded 3 transportation economic development grants for traffic and streetscape improvements, money which changed the whole character of the square. And this was part of a large planning effort. And I think the best tool that we have to go back to mass housing is to say that any redevelopment of this site, you know, needs to be consistent with these planning efforts. They've been successful, resulting in major investment in the commercial districts, new mixed housing developments at Milton Landing at 36 Central Avenue, the adaptive reuse of 2 historic mill buildings on the Neponset River, approval of a major mixed-use development at 2 Adams Street, which has not been implemented, adaptive reuse of the large storage warehouse at Milton Village, approval of new market-rate apartment buildings on the Milton Hill House property, and revitalization of the former car dealership into offices and a highly successful new restaurant. The owners of the Hendry's property at 131 Elliott Street submitted a proposal for a new mixed-use development on their site, and after more than 2 years of public hearings on the project, the planning board was unable to get the property owners to propose a zoning-compliant project. At the insistence of the owner, the planning board reluctantly denied the project outright. This site is extremely important to the revitalization of the Central Avenue Business District. It's the largest parcel in the district and is at the key location right on the square. The site is the definition of a smart growth opportunity. It is adjacent to public transport with both train and bus stops, and adjacent to a bicycle path system with access to UMass Boston and downtown. It's in the middle of numerous commercial amenities, including a supermarket and pharmacy within walking distance. It presents the opportunity for redevelopment of an underutilized site rather than the development of a new site, which the Randolph Avenue and the Milton Mews both do redevelop. So it is a smart growth opportunity. And for the above reasons, the site is a good location for an affordable housing development. Because of its importance to the commercial district, we've identified several concerns that I feel are important to address in project planning. It's important that the development include a commercial component consistent with the long-established goals for the area revitalization. The building height and massing should be consistent with the commercial area, and the adjacent it should provide a public gathering space in support of the commercial district as recommended by the ULI and the PUD bylaw. The traffic impacts need to be studied and addressed. The proposed driveway is on a narrow residential street and very close to an already overburdened intersection. Consideration should be given to the scale of the building and setbacks on the parcel zoned for single-family residential development. The far end of the site is a residential lot where the biggest part of the building is located. The town should prefer an ownership development to a rental department. But I know this is dictated in large part by the project funding sources and also, the ability of these units to apply toward our affordable housing zone. But I think that a well-planned, well-designed, affordable housing development could be a valuable addition to the town, and this could be a good place for it. But there are significant concerns that I think are legitimate concerns that the board should address to mass housing in response to this proposal. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Peter. Anyone else want to comment?
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. Good.
My name's Matt Zoller. I'm at 313 Elliott Street, and I'm an affordable housing developer. And I come here as a resident, though, today. I look at this project and I say to myself, well, that's interesting. I know there have been many proposals here before this one. The condo project that was discussed earlier with the ground floor retail, a larger 40B proposal, and now this scaled down version. So I've been watching the genesis of this project come to fruition. Or we're not sure yet. We'll see. I want to point to an issue that I raise. I'm a father. My son's 18 months old, and in the warm weather, we walk down Elliott Street quite often in his carriage, and now he's starting to walk, so we'll be walking down the street. And I think a project of this scale presents significant issues as it relates to traffic. So I agree with things that have been said this evening as it relates to a traffic study and the need to do that so we can understand the impacts to the neighborhood and the corner here. My family also frequents the businesses down in this intersection, so I feel that a project that offers no additional commercial activity could be a real detriment to the town. There's an opportunity to realize additional tax revenue here, so you guys should be looking at that. I also feel like this is probably the second busiest commercial district in Milton, and it could be even busier if there was a ground floor retail opportunity here. So I think it's a real shame that this proposal does not include that. The traffic, a real issue for safety, and then this opportunity lost if we do not realize commercial in the bottom of this building. So I'm all for 40B. Affordable housing, we need more affordable housing in the state of Massachusetts, but those are my two comments on this project.
So as an affordable housing developer, how many units would you be satisfied with here?
I don't think that the scale of the building is too large, in terms of the density here. I am interested to know what the financial structure of the project is. If this is an affordable housing project, it needs to be managed as an affordable housing project, and I don't know if the developer is equipped to do that. So I would be interested to know what the financial structure is here. So if that question could be answered by the attorney, that would be helpful information.
Okay. Are you? Okay. Well, thank you. Anyone else for comment?
Can I just add in that both the application for the Henry's building and the Randolph Ave project are on the town's website. If you go to the homepage, top right-hand corner, there's a comment about 40Bs in town. Click on it, and the individual projects pop up under it. So
that's good to know. Thanks, Bill. Yep. Mr. Freeman?
Good evening, and for the record, Peter Freeman, attorney, Freeman Law Group in Yarmouthport, and I appreciate and commend the board for having these hearings. It's the right thing to do during the comment period and to assist you in making your recommendations. Just briefly, and I hope to be brief in general and certainly to answer questions, just briefly, in the spirit of John Whitten, if you will, my background is also many, many years of, in my case, advocating for affordable housing developments. I've helped create thousands of affordable housing projects and units, I should say, not projects, but units across the Commonwealth, 150 towns. My desire and my goal on this particular project is to move forward. By the way, I have to do tit for tat. He teaches at Boston College Law School, I teach at Boston University School of Law, and I teach affordable housing and community development law. Enough on me. Other than the fact that my whole approach is to try to make any application as positive and cooperative as it can be. And so this is the first time you've met me. This is the first time I'm meeting Bill. I already made an appointment to meet with him after the site visit on Thursday and talk more. And we both thought it would be useful to have the benefit of the site visit and even this public hearing for some discussion that he and I will have. And I appreciate his agreeing to do that. We spoke last week, I think it was. But my whole approach, knowing the history, is that we want to move forward. We want to work cooperatively with the town. I think some of the speakers acknowledged, especially the last one, that there are some good building blocks here. I don't want to criticize another application, but this one does stand very differently than the previous one you discussed in terms of smart growth. It certainly is a smart growth development. And the attributes that also affect the scale and the size, although I appreciate the previous speaker saying he didn't really have a problem with the density of the size. Traffic, by the way, we'll always address traffic. I believe we have a study and we're going to update it. We'll certainly do that with the Zoning Board of Appeals, absolutely. But some of the attributes, both for your benefit and the public's benefit, it is significant that it is replacing an existing building. So it's not just comparing it to single family across the street or single family up the hill. It is replacing a very large existing building that's outlived its life, and it will be a benefit to remove that and have a building. We think it is attractive. Can we always work with the town maybe a little on the design? Sure, but we certainly made an effort to make it a good proposal and attractive. So we think that that's a very important distinction. And in terms of smart growth, that's one of the fundamental things, to reutilize a site where there already has been development. Again, the previous speaker said that. So that's one key thing, and of course it's right next to the MBTA, so it absolutely has the virtue under quote-unquote smart growth of promoting, excuse me, mass transit, use of mass transit. And that does affect the number of parking spaces. I understand that towns, be it selectmen and zoning boards, are always concerned about that. Yes, it's less than the ratio that's often required, 2 spaces per unit, but we have tons of empirical data that shows that the ratio we have is more than sufficient, especially when there is the mass transit literally right next door. So again, that's always a legitimate question that people raise. We're totally satisfied that it will not create any problem or exacerbate any problem. Design-wise, as I believe all of you know, we actually have worked with Mass Housing Partnership. In this case, it's not Mass Housing Finance Agency, it's Mass Housing Partnership. And as I think you know, they picked up on the fact of the massing and the design to try to push us, and they did successfully push us over the last many months to reduce the size and the scale. Because as I think somebody noted, it was probably Mr. Clark in his good presentation. I appreciate you putting all that together. Originally, it was 72 units. It was taller, and we made a very concerted effort, and we were, in fact, pushed by that particular agency, MHP, Mass Housing Partnership. So we are sensitive to that. On that score, I would just also note that not only, better a little further away, thanks, not only is it very unique to compare it to the fact that it has to be compared to the existing building that it will replace, but the existing zoning actually allows buildings of similar size, not necessarily as of right, but in the business district, and it is true, it's the back part of the site, or I should say up the hill, is the residential area, but a lot of it is in the business district, and the height that's allowed it can be allowed by the Board of Appeals is actually 65 feet, and our highest height is 60.5 feet. And under that PUD, the PUD, I believe the height limit is 45, and again, our highest is 60. So it's basically, in my opinion, fairly close to what could be allowed after the review of a Board of Appeals on other types of uses for this area. Some of the points that perhaps we could talk about that the last speaker just made, commercial, is that possible? I don't want to promise something that we can't give. So I can't say we'll definitely do that. I respect the suggestion. It involves some other speakers also, the businessmen in the area. I can see why that would be useful. I also think, though, that it would be a boon to the existing businesses, that there will be a nice quality, a high quality with 75% market rate and 25% or 26.5% affordable units to introduce a new residential population that will serve the existing businesses, retail, restaurants, all of that quite well. So I think even without commercial, it's a benefit to the existing area. So I think those are the main points I wanted to convey, that I think there are a lot of benefits and pluses for this project to go forward. I'll be the first to say, at one and the same time, I urge my clients, and we did it here, to try to make it as acceptable as possible. But in the experience I've had with 150 projects, there can always be some tweaking. And I don't want to promise something I can't give. We believe it's appropriate in size and scale and the number of units. But, starting Thursday, I'll talk to Bill. We're listening to the comments now. And we would hope that you certainly should write comments with any concerns to MHP, but we would sincerely hope that, in part with the benefit of this hearing and discussion you have with Bill, that you could actually support the project, and certainly note any concerns and questions you have and things that you would like us to address. So I'll stop there, and certainly if you have questions while I'm here, happy to try to answer.
Go ahead, Tom. Peter, it seems like, and we've only heard from a couple of people so far from the area, but it seems to be that there at least is, and it clearly is a smart growth area. There's no question about that. It's got public transportation, it's got shopping, it's got bike paths, it's got everything that you would require for a smart growth area. There was some concern about the density, obviously. I guess my question, and I don't know whether there's any appetite on the part of the town or the planning board to do it, but is there any possibility that the developers would be amenable to a 40R, 40S and make it 20% as opposed to 26% and a little less dense and a little more commercial?
I haven't discussed it, so I don't want to guess at an answer. I'll certainly make note of that. Part of it is time. We spend a lot of time working on this, but if there's something that is equally suitable that can be done in a reasonable time frame that has the support, I'll certainly pass on the question. I've done 40Rs. I don't know the status of what the state is now doing with 40Ss. Mm-hmm. Are you thinking of 40R or S?
Yeah.
Because 40R would take 40R would take a change in zoning. You actually
I understand that. That's why I don't know if there's the appetite from the town, but but it gives you a little more financial viability because you're 20% as opposed to 25% affordable. We get some of the reimbursements from the state, correct?
In theory, yes, but I'm not sure that the state has the money
to do it
right now. That was one of the comments I heard earlier today, is that, nice idea, but the state doesn't have the funding. Also, it would take and push out, in order to address the 40R, we'd have to address it in the October town meeting.
Yes.
And we'd expect the Attorney General to approve it in next March.
Right, so you push yourself out almost a year. Yeah, you do push yourself out a year. But
which, and forgive me for sounding perhaps like a cockeyed optimist, but if there's any merit design-wise and mixed-use-wise, because of that time frame alone, I think would compel my client to go forward with the 40B. Mm-hmm. And we would do it sincerely, but if there's some viability to something like that, we could, discuss. Again, I don't want to hold out anything as if I'm just going to
Understand.
say yes to things to try to, sound agreeable. I'm pretty sure, I'll say 99.999% that we will go through this process, proceed with the 40B, if in the way there can be discussions about something that might be even more attractive to the town, certainly we can discuss them.
Right. And you could certainly go forward with both at the same time. Obviously, I would expect you would continue to go forward with the 40B
Right.
anyways.
Right.
But you may as well get your eligibility and everything else.
Sure.
They're still eligible under 40B to put commercial into
Sure, I understand
the
that.
beginning,
Yeah.
into the first floor. I think that several people have made that point. I know the board has. I know Mr. Freeman's listening. And we'll bring it back to Mr. Conley that it is something that we would prefer to see in the first level of the building.
Okay. Bill, when did we requested a 60-day extension? Where
We
are
did.
we with that?
Letter went out yesterday.
Yesterday, okay. Okay, just to recap, the comments from the audience tonight are a possible commercial space.
Peter wanted to speak.
Oh, Peter? I apologize.
There's several people that want to speak.
Okay.
Fine, sure, fine.
Thank you, Mr.
Yep,
Freeman.
Thank you.
Okay, Peter.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Peter Mullen, 19 Gaskins Road, Town Meeting Member, Precinct 2. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to speak, of you all holding this comment period. I think it's helpful to have a little bit of background, a little bit of perspective as to what's going on. It's my understanding that the owners of the Henry site, who have owned it for 14 years, have recently, Jerry and Steve Conley, have recently organized a new limited liability corporation called 131 Elliott Street LLC, and that's the applicant to develop this 40B proposal. And they've applied to the Mass Housing Partnership for a project eligibility letter. And my understanding is if they are successful in obtaining that letter, it will allow them to apply to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a comprehensive permit to build the project that they want to build, and that it will also make them eligible for financing through the Mass Housing Partnership, which I understand may include subsidized financing. My understanding is that Mass Housing Partnership will accept comments from the Board of Selectmen, but they generally won't accept them from the general public. That's why you're holding this hearing. And my understanding is that the principal issue before the Mass Housing Partnership is whether 131 Elliott Street LLC, the new recently created corporation, qualifies for a project eligibility letter. I think it's important to remember that this isn't the first 40B proposal here, that over a year ago, in March of 2013, there was a proposal to build 72 units on that site. A letter was submitted and a plan was submitted then. My understanding is that nothing happened at Mass Housing Partnership, that there was a request for additional information from the applicant, and that the applicant wasn't forthcoming with additional information, and things just sat. And during that time period, the owner had discussions with town officials with regard to pursuing the condominium project. Those things broke down, and now we have this new 40B application. In preparing these comments, I've compared the 2013 application for the 72-unit project with the current 2014 proposal to build a 57-unit project. There's a couple of things I'd like to say that I think everyone concerned with this project will agree with. One is that the Henry's building is an eyesore, that it needs to be demolished. It's a blight in the neighborhood, and that we all want to get rid of it. I think there's also a consensus within the community that affordable housing is an important project. Milton needs to do a better job with affordable housing. I'm certainly not opposed to affordable housing. I'm not opposed to affordable housing at that site. I do think that this current proposal is not appropriate for that site. With regard to your comment letter, I think there are some things that you should include in your comment letter. One of the things that is relevant to a project eligibility letter is whether or not the applicant has the background and experience to accomplish the project. Your applicant is a limited liability corporation which has been in existence for 1 year. As far as anyone can tell from the application, has no assets, no experience, has never done anything other than be organized. The two managers that are listed are Jerry Conley and Steve Conley. In the application, there's a 1-paragraph, 14-line description of their experience. And in that, that's tab 1 to the March 14th letter. In that description, in touting their experience, the only two things that they say they've done that qualifies them to do this project is an 18-unit mixed-use building in Dorchester and a 19-unit mixed-use building in Stoughton. The project that they're proposing is 2.5 times bigger than anything they've ever done. It involves 6-story construction. And if you look at the schematics of the building from the Central Avenue perspective, across from the cleaners, you'll see that it rises 6-story. The construction is very different. The buildings, the other two projects they've done, I don't believe that they've required any steel in connection with building. I believe a 6-story building will require steel. They have absolutely no experience with regard to affordable housing. They claim in their application that the application fits, quote, the same profile as projects that they've done in the past. I think that's absolutely incorrect, and you should say so in your application. As I understand 40B, there are only 3 types of entities that are allowed to apply for 40B comprehensive permits: public agencies, nonprofit organizations, and something called a limited dividend organization. And this application is a so-called limited dividend organization. Under that application, the rules established by 40B and the regulations provide that there's limits on the developer's fee that the developer can earn in connection with developing the project. The current owner of that land is Carrick Realty Trust. The developer is 131 Elliott Street LLC, and they will not only be the developer, but they're proposed as the property manager for the 20-year life of the project. The construction company that they say they're going to use to build the project is Conley Construction Company Incorporated. All 3 of those entities are owned and managed by Jerry and Steve Conley. And that creates huge conflict of interest issues with regard to this development. Because if you're a limited dividend organization, there's a limit as to how much money you can take out of the project, and there's a huge potential to draw more money out of the project and exceed the 40B guidelines by paying more for the purchase of the land or paying more to the construction company with regard to the construction of the development. There are resumes included with regard to both the corporations and the individuals that are mentioned in this application. There are no resumes that I can find in there, and we have no financial information whatsoever as to any of these companies, whether they have the assets to do this project, or whether any of the individuals have the experience. One of the requirements to do a 40B project is you have to either own the land or you have to have the land under agreement. It seems to me in this application, the applicant does not have control of the land. The applicant is 131 Elliott LLC. The land is currently owned by Carrick Realty Trust. There's a purchase and sale agreement that's submitted as part of the application, which proposes to transfer the land from Carrick Realty Trust to 131 Elliott LLC for $1. That agreement is scheduled to expire on July 15th of this year, 2014. There is a rider attached to that purchase and sale agreement that provides that the buyer's obligation, meaning the applicant's obligation to purchase the land, is contingent on the buyer obtaining a permit and approvals to build a 72-unit rental dwelling unit. So that it seems to me, because the contingency of a 72-unit approval, they have not submitted a P&S that shows that they control this site. It seems to me that that's a defect in the application and that it doesn't meet the requirements of Mass Housing Partnership. Both the 2013 and the 2014 applications provide what is described in the 13 application as development budgets, and it purports to be the costs and the expected revenues. It's very difficult to do a comparison between what's in the two different years because they don't follow the same format. They don't track all the costs and all the revenues in the same manner. But in reviewing what they did include, I think it raises issues about manipulating the revenues and the costs here, and whether or not there's an effort to defeat the developer's fee limitations. The acquisition costs in both 2013 and 2014 list $2.5 million for the cost of this new corporation to acquire the land. There's no explanation as to how they arrived at that price. The stated price in the P&S is $1. The land was purchased in 2000 by the current owner, Carrick Realty Trust, for $258,000. The land is currently assessed for fiscal year 2013 at $473,000, approximately a $2 million difference. I would suggest that if counsel has been here on behalf of the applicant and says that they're willing to provide information, then the board can request information from them. If they don't want to provide it to you, then I suggest that you put in your application letter to Mass Housing Partnership that they get some explanation as to why the acquisition cost should be $2.5 million and why this isn't an attempt to defeat the limited developer fee. With regard to construction costs, in the 2013 proposal for the 72-unit development, the data that they submitted says that the cost per square foot to build the building would be $132.38 per square foot. That's a 7-story building with 72 units, a bigger building. The current proposal, the 2014, 57 units, the construction cost is higher. It's $148.51 per square foot. Why is a smaller building more expensive? I think we need an explanation as to that. Or is that just an attempt to defeat a developer's fee? There are a number of things that are listed in the current 2014 proposal that are much more expensive than they were in the 2013 proposal. For legal, title, and recording fees in 2013, it was $86,000. In the current proposal, it's $160,000. I can't see of any reason why that would be the case. With regard to purported marketing costs, that wasn't even listed as an expense in the 2013 application. It's $144,000 in this application. There's something called bond premium in the current proposal. It's $123,000. It wasn't listed in the prior application. I think you need to either retain someone yourself to analyze the financial aspects of this proposal, or at least urge Mass Housing Partnership to do that. Pete Jackson mentioned the history of the town's planning and its efforts in the development in this business district. I think it's important for you to make Mass Housing Partnership aware of those efforts, the town, and I think the town's efforts with this developer. Others have also mentioned the need for a comprehensive traffic study. There's been a huge amount of development in this business district. We've had the addition of the Plate Restaurant, 36 Central Avenue, Steel and Rye Restaurant, and the 50 Elliott Street building. The Conleys have submitted a number of traffic studies in the past in connection with other proposals that they've made to the planning board. They've used inconsistent criteria, and the expert that they used had one set of references with regard to the 36 Central Avenue project and a different set of references with regard to the Hendry's project. You know, traffic studies were done in mid to late August with regard to the Hendry's project, a time when there's probably fewer people around in this town than any other time in the year. There was also a traffic study done in the first week in December. So that I think you want to make sure that there is a traffic study and that it's done at a time when it will truly measure what traffic is like. I think you also want to comment on both to the developer and to Mass Housing Partnership with regard to parking. Bill mentioned that it's 75 parking spaces for 57 units. It's 1.3 parking spaces per unit. Mr. Freeland said that they have tons of data with regard to why that's an appropriate number. I'd urge you to ask him for that, make that data available, and let people see it and comment further to you with regard to that data. The application has a theme to it that because there's public transportation available, that you don't need as many parking spaces. The assumption that underlies that theme is that people won't have a car because they're right on the trolley line. The question is not whether people are going to take the trolley in town if they work in town. The question is what they're going to do on the weekend. Do they own a car, and are they going to have to find a place to park that car during the week when they're taking the trolley in town? And I think that's what you need to get information with regard to. I'm encouraged that the attorney is here tonight for the developer. I'm encouraged by the comments he made that he's willing to work with the town and that the developer is willing to at least talk to officials. But it's been a very long process with regard to this. There's been points when I've had optimism in the past. I think you have to make sure that you've put in the strongest letter that you can, and that I think you want to be opposed to this development, and that we go on parallel tracks, and that if the developer wants to talk to town officials and to the people in the neighborhood, we may be able to work something out where there's agreement and things can proceed. But the only way that that works is if you've taken the steps to make sure that Mass Housing Partnership doesn't just rubber stamp this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Peter. Ellen? Yes, it is cold.
And getting colder. Thank you. I'm Ellen Denoyer. I live on Capon Street. I'm a town meeting member in Precinct 2. I'm also a member of the Columbine Cliff Neighborhood Association Board. And as others have said, there's a long history to this project. The neighbors have been very concerned for a very long time. We remain very concerned. I believe that despite Mr. Freeman's goodwill, that this project is overscaled, that it is out of proportion both to the adjacent commercial buildings, and if you look on the far left of that photograph, you can see the tiny little Esprit de Vin, which is dwarfed by this project. So I believe it is out of proportion to the adjacent commercial developments and also residential. I think it's very disappointing with all the work that's been done in the past on this site that there is no public open space or commercial space or public parking, that those are all elements that we had hoped to see on this site. I will reiterate what Peter just said, that the existing building, I believe, is not only an eyesore but a public safety hazard. And I would not want to be a selectman trying to sleep at night, knowing that the town owns a portion of that and knowing that the developer owns a very large portion of it. It has been a public safety hazard for years, and I believe it needs to be demolished immediately. I believe, if I understood right, Mr. Freeman said that the proposal is 60 feet tall and that the PUD was 45 feet tall. And that I believe he was suggesting that that was not significantly larger, but by my math, it's about a third larger than the PUD height, and I think that is significant. And I think one of the reasons that I moved to Milton is because of access to the trolley. And I believe that actually the whole Columbine Cliff Neighborhood Association, the whole neighborhood, really represents smart growth. People live here because they can walk to the trolley. Obviously, there are many amenities. They can walk to the stores. The rest of the neighborhood does not look like this. It is possible to do smart growth. It is possible to do affordable housing that doesn't look like this. And that I think I'm in favor of both of those, smart growth and affordable housing. I don't think it needs to be this big. I don't think it needs to look like this. And I believe that we should, again, advocate to Mass Housing Partnership that this be reduced in scale and developed in a way that is in proportion to and is supportive of the rest of the neighborhood. I also had just one technical question, which is I've heard a reference to a site visit, but I'm not sure that that's been publicized. I don't know if it's public, and I'd be interested in knowing more about the site visit.
It's tomorrow at 12?
Thursday at 12:30.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ellen.
Oh, I'm sorry. I also wanted to mention that the Columbine Neighborhood Association is soliciting comments among the neighborhood, and we will be sending them on to the board.
Fantastic.
And we really appreciate, again, you're holding this hearing, and we appreciate the opportunity to participate and to send comments through you.
Thank you, Ellen. Anyone else for comment? Jean? Hi, Jean.
Hi, everyone. Gene Irwin, town meeting member, precinct 9. I have been following this for many years, like all of you, and I attended even a planning board meeting about 4 years ago. After having watched this for a long time, I got tired of watching it, and at that time, I requested the planning board, please approve a development here. We've all admitted it's unsightly. It's been like this for 20-something years. There was a 38-unit development with a little bit of commercial space. It didn't fly. And so now here we are. And we also have the town piece of property that I haven't heard anyone discuss what the town is going to do with their property. I think that should be discussed so we can consider the whole parcel. Some people are saying they'd like a little bit more parking, that sort of thing, or a gathering spot. I'd appreciate some comments from the town as to what their ultimate goal is with that spot. I know the developer offered them $400,000 and to take down the building, and that didn't work. So I would
But then he also offered 1,000.
I understand they offered 400,000, then 300,000, and then 1,000 that was turned back into 240,000.
Right.
To me, if I was the town, I would have given it to them. Absolutely given it to them. If we'd done the 38 units, we would have reaped 350,000 a year in property taxes. Now we're looking at 131,000. If I may say so, the town property, instead of tearing it down, I'd ask the Conleys to take it off my hand and let them add some more units there. You know, I think it helps the whole town to have some affordable housing stock added. I think we could add about another 12 spots with the town's parcel and probably pick up about 18 parking spaces, which would lend, say, 6 more to guest or public spots. So I'm an advocate after 14 years of looking at the eyesore to get this done, and I don't want to see any more delays personally. Thank you.
Thanks, Gene. Anyone else for comment? Okay, Bill, do you want to finish up your presentation, or do you have any more comments?
I don't. I just have that the site walk is 12:30 on Thursday.
But that's not for the public.
It's anybody can go.
Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So that's the end of the Henry's discussion. I just want to recap what was mentioned here tonight. We talked about, and actually it was a very good point by Ellen Denoyer, that the height is actually a third larger than what's allowed by the PUD. We talked about that there's no provision for public parking. There isn't any commercial space, which was what we would like to see there. It is a smart growth area, and you will get some support from this board, without a doubt. We'd like to see a better designed building. To me, personally, I think it's just a bunch of triple deckers put together on that site, and it's a little bit ugly. It could be better. We do need a comprehensive study on parking, no doubt about it. And is it too dense? Possibly. We'd have to discuss that in executive session, I believe. Peter Mullen made some very good points about the legalities of the ownership, which I actually questioned myself. Conflict of interest. We will have our council look into that, and no doubt we would hope that Mass Housing Partnership will do their due diligence. And I actually did question the purchase of the land for $2.5 million. That was one of the red flags that went up for me. Having said all that, we requested a 60-day extension for a comment period, which started yesterday. We didn't get it accepted yet. Of course, we sent the letter in yesterday.
The comment period started February 25th.
Right, but we requested an extension.
For an extension. We're doing two 240B letters at the same time. We have the other one that is due March 31st.
Right.
That's probably one of our biggest reasons for pushing it out. I mean, you can only do just so much.
Okay. So in the meantime, we will be putting a letter together. Yes, Peter?
Maybe you can ask for agreement of the applicant to the extension of time to make your comments.
We can do that. But in the meantime, we will be working with Bill and our town council in putting a letter together. And we do have a very good lawyer on our board here in Katie who will be scrutinizing it and bringing it back to us for final approval. So that's where we are. I thank you for coming tonight. Mr. Freeman wants another word?
Just briefly, I know you have other things.
Yep.
And I will also submit a letter. But just given the fact that this is a public hearing, on just a couple of the points, and everything can be reviewed, not trying to cover anything up, just the opposite, but I would say almost allegations of two things, conflict of interest and trying to skew things so that you can get around the 40B profit limitations. Nothing could be further from the truth. I am an expert on 40B. I guided my client. Everything is within the guidelines and the parameters of how MHP both has us do, and they also review them. And we had, by the way, an outside financial consultant, not me, but an outside financial consultant who's expert on 40B and the guidelines. So in no way is there a conflict. What the guidelines refer to are related parties, and it costs certification at the end. The fact that there are related parties, there are certain limits on what the construction costs can be, so that there can't be any, hanky-panky or gouging or anything like that. But that's the last thing that is going on, and I just want to say that openly, publicly in this setting. So I can assure you that that's not what's going on. MHP wouldn't allow it to go on. And the question of the valuation, the way it works is MHP will actually hire an appraisal. Our estimate is that the land value under existing zoning is that figure. But what happens under 40B is there are guidelines that all of the agencies have to abide by that say, for purposes of the budgets, the pro formas, the value as of right at the time we applied to MHP is what the value would be. So if their appraisal, which is an arm's length professional appraisal that will be done, if the appraisal comes in differently, then the pro forma will be adjusted. So again, I wanted to assure everybody, most importantly the selectmen and the public, that that's how it works, and there's certainly no game. It would be shooting ourselves in the foot to try to play games with something that is so well defined by the guidelines and regulations and also the public scrutiny that takes place. So again, there's more that I could say that I'll just wait. One quick thing. Mr. Mullen, I believe it was, he omitted the beginning of the summary of their experience. We cited the most recent examples of their apartment development. At the start of that paragraph, which is a fairly lengthy paragraph, it said that over the years they've developed hundreds of units and built, developed, and managed commercial and rental over many years. And then we said the 2 or 3 most recent examples. So again, I'll stop there. I'll submit things in written form as well.
And I would actually, I'll back you on that comment because I actually, I do know Jerry Connolly, and he is a good builder, and there is no doubt in my mind that he's more than capable of building this 57 units.
Sure, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you all. Okay, we're going to take I think we said a 5-minute recess while we gather ourselves for the rest of the meeting. Thank you for coming again. Mike, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Okay.
Over the sewer.
All right, welcome back to the Board of Selectmen meeting for March 11, 2014. The next item on the agenda is the number 9, the change of Board of Directors for Wollaston Golf Club, and we have a motion.
I think we've got a lot of detail in this motion that we might not need, but I'm going to read it anyway. So I'll move that we approve the appointments of the following members to the Board of Directors of Wollaston Golf Club. John Pereira, 3 Heather Drive, Milton. Paul McManamus, Jr., 500 Atlantic Avenue, number 20C, Boston. David Ferrari, 20 Deerfield Drive, Milton. Dennis Lombardo, 54 Highland Circle, Wayland. and to forward the pertinent paperwork to the ABCC for its approval.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Number 11 on the agenda is the Town School Consolidation Committee appointment.
I'll move that-
Go ahead.
I'll move that we approve the appointment of Philip Matthews, 154 Reedsdale Road, to the Town School Consolidation Committee to serve through February 2015.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further comment? All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Number 12, the Town School Consolidation Committee Charge Amendment.
Okay, I'll move to accept a friendly amendment from the school committee to the town/school consolidation committee charges as follows: to explore opportunities for efficiencies in process, operations, and/or personnel by consolidating and/or integrating certain functions of the town with those of the school department, including but not limited to the areas of business office and information technology, and to make recommendations based on the results of such work for the consideration of the Board of Selectmen and the school committee.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous. Number 13, the Baron Hugo gazebo use. We have some dates that need approval.
I'll move that we approve the use of the Baron Hugo Gazebo, Town Green, for the following anticipated summer band concert dates between the hours of 5:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. June 4th, 11th, 18th, 25th, July 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, and 30th, August 6th and 13th, and August 20th and 27th for rain dates, and June 12th for a special children's concert.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's unanimous.
And those are Wednesdays, not Tuesdays, so that's a good thing.
All right. At this time, we'll go back to number 8 on the agenda, which is the unknown, unbilled sewer charge policy. And at this time, I'd like to bring up our Director of DPW, Joe Lynch, and our Town Council, John Flynn, please. Welcome, gentlemen. Hi, John. Hi, Joe.
Good evening.
Good evening. So can you take us through the, your motions and what you came up with and this delicate subject of sewer charges, unbilled sewer charges?
Sure, just as a, excuse me, just as a matter of a quick recap, the town learned of one isolated incident where a person selling their home was certain they were connected to the sewer. The real estate person was not so sure because they didn't have a supporting water and sewer bill that showed that. It led to the question, led to the research on that one, and lo and behold, in fact, this was a property connected to sewer and had not received a bill in several decades. That manifested itself into, the DPW taking a GIS approach by, and I say GIS in context of graphical information systems, where you take a managed database and you take a managed mapping system and you basically ask questions of both to try to help hone in on an answer to a particular series of questions. And in doing so, we looked at all of the water bills that are produced in town, narrowed them down to the ones that got only water bills and not water and sewer bills. And then we had to extract from those the ones that we knew were landscape or second meters, if you will. And we do that by recognizing if there were 2 meters in a single household, that the second one was likely to be the irrigation meter. So with that, we ended up with a list of target properties, and much to our surprise, that target list was, over 250 target properties, actually on the order of 300. So we refined our review down a little bit further to the point of researching the public record that we had in the Public Works Department, and that being permits, sewer tie-in cards, which are measurements that were typically taken during an inspection. And if the sewer was there, then the measurement was taken, and that helped us hone in on the list. And then lastly, a review of any maps or larger scale plans that would have shown or suggested that a house might have been connected, further back before these earlier permits were, before these permits were in existence or before tie cards were done on a reliable basis.
So if there were plans, then it would suggest that they were connected legally?
That they were, that the town
may not
had
have been
knowledge,
built,
that the
but-
town had knowledge.
Yeah.
And in that first pass, there were 22 properties identified. So suddenly, a single entity manifests itself into 22 additional known, and beyond that, 250 thereabouts target suspect properties. And we said, okay, this is taking on a life of its own. We kept the Board of Selectmen apprised of the situation, both at staff meetings and at public meetings. And the charge to my department and to Attorney Flynn was to craft a policy that could be done on be administered on a uniform basis to address all of these concerns as they arise. And we appeared before this board and over at Town Hall a couple of months ago with a draft policy. And quite frankly, as we saw this this issue coming to life on its own, as did the policy evolved, and I think there was some great reservation amongst the Board of Selectmen with what was the first draft that I prepared and John had briefly reviewed. So I'll fall on my sword for the non-legally structure of the first policy. So we went back after that meeting. I reviewed the DVD transcript of that meeting several times because, quite frankly, it's healthy for a board to not be unanimous all the time. There were some division between board members, and what I tried to do with John Flynn this time around was to craft a policy that tried to fit within the needs of all three selectmen, knowing we're not going to please each of you all the time, but hopefully please most of you all the time. And that's what you have before you. And first and foremost, the other one was crafted mostly talking about the need to help whittle down that 250 target list to something less by encouraging some sort of amnesty. And that was, the thought was that if we made customers know that they were perhaps suspect, and if they stepped forward on their own volition, that there might be some sort of forgiveness on how far back we would go. Attorney Flynn issued a legal opinion to the board, which I believe was an executive session, so I won't discuss that at this table. But there were some things within that legal opinion that have been also incorporated into this document. So what started out 2 months ago as a policy statement as to amnesty has now evolved into a policy statement as to the issue at large, the entire issue. It includes what are the target properties and how it is we pared that list down. It speaks to what sort, Section 2 will speak to the investigation of those subject properties that need to move forward, and at each threshold, when a decision is rendered, if the investigation is concluded, or does something else need to be done. It speaks to, and this is the genesis of the need and the timeliness, speaks to the letters that we'll be issuing to the suspect property owners saying that, based on our research, your property is under consideration, and that gives them the onus to come forward if they know they're connected, or better yet, if they don't know they're connected, they just simply don't know. It gives them the onus to contact us as well, and we can do a verifying and inspection. And the reason why we thought that was appropriate is in order for us to do these inspections in the simplest manner, is we do need the cooperation of the homeowner to get into the house. We have full authority to get into that house, but we're looking to do that in a more amicable fashion. So that section speaks to the investigation and our ability to get into the properties. Section 3 speaks to the issues of those who prove to not be connected. The matter is closed, and that's the end of it. Section 4 speaks to the properties that are confirmed to be connected, and then lays out the various things that we need to consider, such as immediately putting them on the SOAR rules for future billing, and whether they came forward under some sort of relaxation or amnesty, if you will, for less than the full 6 years, and 6 years being the statute of limitations. And then speaks to a repayment plan.
Okay, can we stop there for a second?
Sure.
Is there any reason, because, I mean, I think it is kind of germane to discussing this, that we understand what the two legal, the legal opinion. I mean, can we go over that in public session? Okay.
Yes.
I mean, I'd like to have an understanding of that before we start delving into the specifics. I mean, it's been a while since we actually, it's been a few weeks since we actually went through it again, just to make sure we all still understand it.
Mr. Chairman, members, the issues that were addressed in that legal opinion, you remember there was a pretty basic question, how far back can we go?
Right.
And when it first came up, my gut reaction was you can go back 6 years, because on the theory that this is an implied contract or an unjust enrichment, either someone has been getting sewer and knew it and the town was supplying them a service, or that the town didn't know anything about it and they were doing it kind of deliberately. But in either way, whether it's an implied contract or an unjust enrichment, because they're getting something but not paying for it. So that was the theory behind the 6 years. But I did look at it a little further, and with help from some of our attorneys, including Brandon Moss was here, there are a couple of asterisks to that. The main one is that if this situation involves fraudulent concealment by the property owner, if they fully knew that they were getting service, knew they should have been paying something, did nothing about it, withheld that information from the town, then that's an exception to the 6-year rule. In that case, your cause of action, you have 6 years to file a suit, but there's no limit to how far back you can go. For example, if the same person owned the property for 10 years, fraudulently concealed the fact that they're tied into sewer and weren't getting billed for it, then the town would have the right, within 6 years of finding that out, to go back and charge them for every...
Even if he didn't own the property, still.
Well, I'm referring to when they owned the property, because you'd have to then show that a prior owner fraudulently concealed it. It gets a little complicated, but just for purposes of this, if you're talking about the same owner. The second issue is, if it was inherently unknowable, is the legal language, for the town to have known it, then the same principle applies. From the time you knew about it or should have known about it, you can go, for 6 years, you have the right to seek all the unpaid charges, not just the 6 years back. Those are two exceptions. They sound great, they read well, they're very hard to prove. But I thought the board should know that those two exceptions exist. A third complicating factor, which the board did mention when we met, was if there's a clean municipal lien certificate owned, and you all talked about that. For example, if during this period of unbilled sewer, the property changed hands, and because we didn't know about the sewer situation, the town issued them a clean lien certificate that showed no charges or assessments due, then you have a property owner who's really proceeding in good faith about the property, doesn't know about the problem. The way the municipal lien certificate law reads is there's no lien against that property for charges against the property because we issued a clean lien certificate. You still would have the right to sue the owner, the seller, if you will. And again, the 6 years would apply, but again, the same principle, if that prior owner fraudulently concealed it, the same principles apply. So I mentioned that in the opinion as well.
But you wouldn't be able to lien the property because they don't own it any longer.
Yes, but you still would have a right of action against them. So with those exceptions, the basic rule is 6 years back, but those exceptions apply. And that was basically the essence of the opinion that I read. And yes, we can discuss that in open session.
Okay. We just did.
Yes.
Yep. Continue, Joe. Yes, and within the context of this policy, those exceptions are spelled right out in here. So even under the remote sense that it's unlikely that we might be able to prove it, the provision is in here if that case does arise. Okay? So one thing that, it includes the amnesty provision in paragraph 4C, and the amnesty, as we had thought, was for those customers who do come forward on their own volition, rather than going back the full 6 years, that we would go back only the 4 years. And those customers who come forward would be that they know they're connected and come forward and tell us as much, or simply even those who receive a letter and say, look, I don't know, And if they come forward and invite us in for the inspection and it proves to be connected, we would grant them the same sort of leniency. One thing that came out in that meeting a couple of months ago was that we thought that in every instance, regardless of whether they were granted the leniency of 2-year reduction or not, that under the repayment plan, that all people would be granted a full 6 years to repay. And quite frankly, from an administrative perspective, that makes it a lot easier if everybody's on the same ground. So even if a person were only assessed charges for the previous 4 years, we would give them the next 6 to pay those off.
Okay.
We also got onto that repayment issue, a lot of discussion in the fairness of what is an account in good standing and what happens with the accrued interest. The goal here is to get the customers to repay, and when they do that on a faithful basis, that the interest at the end of that process would be waived. From part of the archaic accounting system and billing software system that the town currently employs, we do not have the ability to implement a manual system. So when a new property is discovered to be connected, they will be immediately placed on the sewer rolls. So the next bill that customer will get, they will see for the first time water and sewer charges, and that same bill will have total amount of previous assessment based on if this policy passes tonight or when it does pass. On that very first bill, there'll be no assessment of interest because it's the first time the customer has seen it.
Interest starts to accrue
That's
from that
correct.
point.
So at the next quarter, the bill will, I'm gonna presume they're gonna make that 1/24th, or if you will, 1/4's worth of 6 years' payments. 1/24th of that total assessment will be due in the next. That second bill will show an accrued interest amount for the remaining balance. There is no way to take that off, but we will make certain in the letter that's spelled out clearly. And we'll have a policy sheet, if anybody comes in, that we could just simply give them that shows it, that that's what we intend to do. But we cannot strike it from the billing system.
Because the system just
It
calculates.
just cannot do it.
It can't be removed, though, once it is abated at the end of time.
At the very end, it can be abated. Now, what we want to be, the policy goes right into that, the expectation is they continue to pay their bill, their regular bill, the one that's due that quarter, on time. If they don't pay the regular bill on time, we, as a community, aren't about to waive that interest. That interest is due. So that's good. Another reason why that has to stay in the interest calculation. So there is going to be some annual calculation and processing of bills for whatever number these finally come down to be. Those bills that are received by the treasurer will have to come into my water and sewer accounting office to be able to, manually credit and track each of those payments.
Did we fix the people selling their homes?
We did.
Okay.
I think we did. We definitely addressed it, and I think we addressed it to your satisfaction. If they're selling their homes, the balance is due, in full. If they've only recently purchased their home, absent any proof of fraudulent concealment, we're only gonna go back to the time that they've owned the home. So, the policy that we circulated last week and got on the agenda, we have received some comments on it, and some of the more substantive comments, not that all of them were germane, some of the more substantive dealt with the appeals process. And again, I'm gonna follow my sword that even reviewing the DVD of the last meeting, and this is one of the areas I think that you were somewhat ununified in the appeal. What was clear was that the Board of Selectmen was going to appoint the Assistant Town Administrator as the appeals officer, and this policy looks, once adopted, that it does that. It then sets forward timetables for the Assistant Town Administrator to hear that appeal, to render a decision. And I'm reading from the comments that are revised, that the appeals officer himself will render a decision, and the homeowner, the property owner, will be notified of that decision. If they then disagree with the appeals officer's decision, then they will have 10 days to file a written appeal with the Board of Selectmen for the Board of Selectmen to hear a second appeal. If there is no appeal of the appeals officer's original decision, that decision will be binding, and that'll be the end of it. The repayment will be as such. if, in fact, the appeal is filed with the Board of Selectmen, then the Selectmen make an ultimate decision, final decision, then that appeal will be binding and will be final from an administrative perspective. And those are I do have additional sheets to pass around regarding the changes to the appeals that were discussed, and there were some sidebar discussions just prior to us coming to the table that are going to result in some edits that we can discuss. So rather than deal with the appeal itself, do you want to go through the body of the policy, or have you had an opportunity to review it and have specific questions that we can answer?
Sure.
Your preference.
I'll defer, it's tax season, so at best I had a chance to skim this thing.
Well, Joe, those are my comments about the appeal period. So just so for the benefit of Dennis and Tom, who are just seeing them now, and this is not quite in the final form, we were just going over it. Initially, in the draft that we saw, it was structured that the assistant town administrator, who's the appeals officer, would make a recommendation to the town administrator, who would then have the final determination. But I do recall at our last meeting, I think we all, or most of us, were in agreement that the Board of Selectmen is the Water and Sewer Commissioner, so ultimately the decision probably should continue to rest with the board. That said, anything that comes to us would be at a public meeting, whereas an appeal to one individual would be, administrative, but it wouldn't be a televised meeting, and that would be a first stop to have and we did talk about designating the assistant town administrator who is the former health director, who has experience dealing with septic issues and has some background that would, I think, probably be most applicable in this area to handle these sorts of appeals. And what I suggested to Joe, based on what I thought was we need to just make sure that we're all on the same page, was that rather than going from the assistant town administrator to the town administrator and then stopping there, that at least I thought we should go from the assistant town administrator to the board. The town administrator has a lot of other responsibilities, and the idea was to designate the new assistant town administrator to handle this rather than the town administrator having to do it.
So to go to the board if the person wanted to pursue it further than the assistant?
Yes.
Yeah.
An appeal from a decision of the assistant town administrator. Now,
But
some
that would
people
be,
may.
and that would be a public hearing?
Yes. There may be someone who comes in, appeals from the DPW's decision and has a hearing before the appeals officer and is satisfied with the outcome of that, and then it wouldn't go any further. So that's what's not quite in front of us, but Joe has a further markup.
And if you want to read along to the handout I just gave out and draw your attention down to subparagraph D, and it's going to, this is what I propose as revised language to address the concern further and try to clarify it. The appeals officer shall render his decision within 14 days of the date of conclusion of the appeals hearing. So the language is going to be modified, that he is making that decision. Then subparagraph E will now read, any party that agrees with the appeals officer's decision issued, they may appeal that decision to the Board of Selectmen and so on. The rest of the paragraph is intact, which then makes paragraph F need to read, if no such appeal is filed, the decision of the appeals officer shall be final. The rest of the appeal section is as drafted. I like that.
So Joe, just in D, let's
And
just.
John, and again, that's me, and I'm not an attorney, so John's got some clarification.
The only thing that I would want to do in this thing, much like you'd appeal in court, that I don't want to make it so easy for just everybody to say, well, I lost here, but I'm going to give it a shot over here, that we have some basis that, if it's a misunderstanding of facts, if there's new facts, that we'll hear them, but if the assistant town administrator had all the facts and ruled in accordance, then I'm not really, I'm not sure that there's any need.
You go against his decision.
I won't, So you've got to show me some new facts, some different facts, something that, that came to light that he wasn't, or that he interpreted the appeal, his process incorrectly, but something other than, I'm just gonna try it again, see what happens. I mean, it's a waste of our time, and,
I think it is
and
unlikely.
I'm
that-
certainly not in favor of it.
Yeah, I think it's unlikely that we'll have a huge number of these coming to the board just
Don't
because
know,
it's.
but I just don't wanna open the floodgates. to-
Right, no, but I think it's probably unlikely, but, before we get to that, just on the technical points, Joe, I think on D, what if we say render a decision rather than render his decision?
Render
And then-
a decision, yes.
Okay, and then E, after the word appeals officer's decision may, I think we take out the word they.
Where's it?
We don't need they, may appeal, just any party that disagrees with the appeals officer's decision may appeal.
That's correct.
Okay.
Did you have others?
I don't understand that change.
Excuse me, the decision by appeals officer may appeal, does it? Attorney Flynn and I are discussing structure. With changes that we just made, we're wondering if F as drafted should go before E, under the presumption that there is no appeal, then the decision is final.
Yes, I agree. Reverse E and F?
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I would also suggest adding at the end of that, and there shall be no further administrative appeal from that decision. So if there's no appeal to the selectmen, that's the end of the story.
Yes.
As with G. Once you get, if it goes to the selectmen, their decision is the end of it. Mr. Early, did you want some language in there that the selectmen?
I don't want them coming back with the same facts. I mean, that like any further appeal, I mean, there's gotta be something new, something different, something that wasn't considered originally, some misinterpretation, of, not the law, I guess, but the appeals process, or, just something so that we don't, just open up the floodgates that anybody can just, if I didn't win there, maybe I'll win here,
I get that, but I think everybody has the right to appeal and.
Well, they did, they had their appeal to the,
Well,
your appeal's not gonna go forward in court unless unless there is an appeal, the,
Flaw in the process.
yeah, that there's,
no, but I mean, one judge might see it differently from another judge. We may see it differently from the assistant town administrator.
but then we cut his legs out from under him. Unless there's something new. I mean, I don't wanna have people coming in, he rendered a proper decision, and now we're in a public hearing, we have a change of heart. I mean, what does that tell him? So there's gotta be something new, something different, something he didn't hear before, or that there was a mistake of law, even though it's not law in this case.
Right, I mean, I get your point, but in the interest of fairness, it's all down to interpretation. He might interpret it one way, we may interpret it a different way. And we have the right to overrule him. We can't give up that right,
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we don't, unless somebody brings something new to the table, I'm out of
Absolutely.
hand not gonna
Absolutely. I mean,
vote in favor of it.
I hear your point, and it's well taken. Don't come to us with the same story.
Right.
But they have the right to come to us with the same story. Because we may interpret it differently.
I mean, we can vote on it. I'm still not in favor of it, but,
Well, I'm not,
I
are
mean,
you
if
not
you
in
two wanna
favor,
go-
Tom, of an appeal to the board?
no, just if it's gonna be an appeal, it'd be like a regular appeals process, that there's something new to bring to the table.
I wonder if there's any language to that effect in the water and sewer regs, since the board is the final arbiter on
No,
the,
actually,
well, there's
the
not
water-
an intermediate appeal, and that's.
No, the water and sewer regs are actually very broad with the right to appeal. A party can come in and file an appeal for any basis within 10 days in writing to the sewer commissioners. And it says just about that and only that.
Right, and we're giving that appeal process to the town administrator. It's just
The
town
earlier version that I had crafted a couple months ago was trying to address the exact same issue, is that, I was trying to define that the fact that you're connected to sewer or not is indisputable. It's there. You can't say, I didn't know it was there. It's there. So, I mean, we were trying to whittle down, but the truth is, welcome to the United States. We're a democratic society. We do have rights to appeal, and I think people do have the opportunity to be heard, and your concern is accurate. You might open the floodgates. The goal is that we have a uniform, consistent policy, hopefully that's fair, that the assistant town administrator, Michael, he understands storage. He came out of the Board of Health. He knows the issue. He's a critical and a good thinker. I think he's an equitable person, so I suspect he would hear those cases pretty fairly in every instance. And as such, I think we should have some faith that that process will limit the appeals that come to you. The truth be told, as Dennis said, but we can't stop them if they want to.
Well, I guess what constitutes an appeal? I mean, does an appeal to where we're giving that person the authority to hear it and to rule on it? I mean,
John and I had that discussion, and we felt that by virtue, my understanding is by adopting the policy that the sewer commissioners do have the authority to extend certain decisions to various staff members.
right. So there is no reason why the appeal process couldn't stop there. I mean, I don't think it should. I think if there are new facts that
You mean stop at the hearings officer? That's true. You could word it that way.
so there's no reason why we couldn't do that. I'm not in favor of doing that, but I'm just not in favor of just somebody shopping for a better answer
Right.
because they didn't like the one they heard over there.
Right, and that's what we'd get, no doubt. So they didn't like Michael's answer, they'll come to us looking for a different answer.
Yeah, and they absolutely will.
But at that particular time, there's three of us deciding on making a decision instead of one. It's 2-1 is the majority,
I mean, like I said, I don't agree with it, but I do agree that we should hear them if there are new facts to be brought, that's all.
Yep.
Would part of your concern be assuaged if we put something in like stating specific grounds for the appeal, so it wouldn't just be a rerun? You'd want to know
Yes, yeah.
why exactly do you appeal from that decision?
Yeah.
Tell
yeah.
us why.
Yeah, what is it different about? Or what was unjust about that decision, that
Is
you
that-
have new facts or, yeah.
So I think you have two options here. One is to make these lengthy with grounds for your decision. I don't know that you want to get into that here.
No, not, yeah.
Standard of review and all that. I mean, you're the Water and Sewer Commissioners, so if you set it up this way, you have the final decision. As long as you're not arbitrary, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And what you said, if that's what a majority of the board feels like, that if this is just a rerun of what we heard before, I'm not going to overturn it, then that's okay for an approach, but it's a little difficult to put that in the regs unless you have a specific standard of review. Now, if it were a court or something, you'd say like, if it exceeded his authority or was arbitrary and capricious or something, but I
Right.
don't know that you want to get into that level.
Yeah, I know.
But at least if you put in a requirement that the appeal be specific and tell you why they're appealing, why they say that decision was wrong, I think that would be helpful here. In other words, you don't want just a one-sentence thing. You want to find out, okay, a lot of time went into this. Why
Yep.
is it wrong?
And we would have the right to deny the further appeal if they didn't come forth with
Yes.
the additional facts of,
I go along with that.
And probably add on a form approved by the selectmen or something, so that
Okay.
right in it, you'd ask them to
Yep.
state the grounds. Yeah.
that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay. doesn't fully address your concern, but at least it makes them state a basis for it.
Right. So John, to recap, you're saying, for example, they get a denial from Michael. They'll have to fill out an appeals application.
Yes.
We review it, and
Yes.
we can decide whether we want to accept it or
There's
deny it
merits to
right
it,
there. Yes, we want to hear this appeal. Can we do that?
You can.
Can't be arbitrary and capricious.
Yes, we structured it as if you would hear it, but I suppose you could just, well, yes, you could decide on the basis of the form. The risk is you'd be accused of being arbitrary. You didn't even give me a hearing, you know. I said my reasons why I disagree. You just, but yes, you could do it. That would be the risk, though.
Mm.
You okay with that?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think it's very unlikely we're going to have many, if any, people coming to the board. I mean,
I
it'll
think
be
if,
near a
I think
televised meeting.
if there's reasonable money involved, then people are gonna go as far as they can.
They might, but a lot of people might not want to hear this at a public meeting, but,
Just so I'm following this, do you want the board to have the authority to reject an appeal just based on the forms without having a hearing? Or do you want to have a hearing in any event?
Is your question, do we need a hearing to reject or accept it? Is that your question?
Yes.
In other words, can we just decide, based upon the facts placed forth in the form,
Right.
that there's no need for, that there's nothing new, there's nothing here to hear?
Right. I have one question. When Michael meets with whoever is going to come in front of him, will that be recorded? So we can hear it? And then if we read the appeal and the answer has already been given during his hearing, that we don't have to hear it then again?
It doesn't say that right now. It could, right now, it does not say that that would be recorded. It certainly could.
Because as Tom said, I don't want to, if they come in and they appeal it to Michael, and then they come to us, we don't want to be answering the same questions again. But we'd like to have that backed up with maybe some recording that we can verify that the questions were answered before.
Yes, certainly could do that, yes. In that event, if it were recorded, just, I want to be sure I'm following this, that you would want the option to deny appeal based upon review of the application and the
Listen to the staff.
transcript without having a hearing.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. Yes, you could do that.
yeah, I guess logistically, you're still bringing that to a hearing before the board to consider whether that criteria has been met, so.
I guess you would, yeah, it'd still have to be a public session, because
There
we
would.
have to,
Right.
we'd have to
That's
meet
right.
on it, sure.
Right.
Would have to be in an open meeting, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the next step with this, Joe? Are you going to make the amendments, is that right?
Well, I suggest we just defer this and revise it and come back to a future meeting with it.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yes.
That was the appeal section was the only substantive changes. I think there was some debate in the last meeting with regard to the repayment plan. And what we did talk about is that, you know, the interest, we took away the whole just cause, the account in good standing provision, and put everybody on the full 6 years repayment basis.
Why don't we do this? Because I don't want to keep pushing this down the road either. I mean, you know, because Joe can't start anything until we get something in place. What if we could always amend this at a later meeting, approve it now the way it is, and let John come back to us with some amended language, which we can either vote up or down then.
We could, although we have a meeting on Tuesday, I don't think it will take very long to address this issue. Do you
Can
think it's
we
realistic,
get it
John,
by
to
Tuesday,
revise
or-
it in the next
I
few
mean, I guess we can
days?
get it by Tuesday, that's fine.
Yeah, I don't think we need it by Friday. We've already seen it. It doesn't have to be in the package for Friday.
So when would you need it? I'm sorry, you have a meeting Tuesday. Do you want it for your packet or just for your meeting?
Just for the meeting, I think. Monday?
Yes,
You can do that?
We can do that.
yes.
All right,
whole
we've only
week?
talked a couple of days, I guess, sure, it's fine.
The whole week, John?
We have nothing else that we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't want to delay this too much longer.
No, I
that's
don't
all.
either.
Yes,
Good. So we get it for next Tuesday's meeting?
Yes.
And then we vote on it. Okay, done.
thank you.
All right, anything else, Joe? Did you
No,
want to?
no, I think it's, I really appreciate your time on this, and I know it's not an easy thing to deal with, and, you know, and I believe we really have stumbled upon a cash windfall for the sewer department in 1 year. And I believe we've really moved forward in identifying, you know, a recurring revenue stream year after year, quarter after quarter with all these new findings.
I know we basically, I mean, and I think I said at a prior selectmen's meeting, basically, other than the one or two that you specifically know about, the rest of them we basically profiled.
That's correct.
Just the same way you'd profile at the airport when, you know, or any place.
That's right, exactly.
And we still don't know.
We're trying to
for certain.
really, we are not taking an accusatory stance whatsoever. You have a house in a neighborhood that has a sewer in front of your home. All your neighbors have sewer.
How come you don't?
Why don't you?
Right.
That's, it's simple as that. And there's a process that we can use to identify that, and we don't mean to be adversarial. And I think in that light was the whole idea of offering some relaxation if those folks came forward.
Mhm.
But we thank you, Joe, for all the work you put in, and you, John, as well.
Thank you.
A lot of work went into this, and we appreciate it.
Thank you very
I
much.
wanted to mention how much work Joe Lynch has done in this, not only, in every respect, technical, I mean, just figuring out how to bill it, believe it or not, was a rather complicated system, but he took the initiative to go and check with all the players, and so I think that language is correct, and to be a sounding board for all the, really a yeoman effort, and you have
Thank you,
nothing
Joe.
else to do.
Thanks, Joe. We're
Thank you,
lucky to
John.
have you.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on. Next up is, as we do at every meeting, we have a department head give his or her quarterly report, and tonight is the inspectional services report given by Joe Prondak, our building commissioner. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Good evening.
Good evening, Joe.
Hi, Joe. How is the inspectional services doing?
Inspectional services, I'd like to start off by saying that this morning I received the news that the warrant committee has voted to fund the remaining hours, or the deficient hours that we had
Great.
for the part-time inspector.
That's excellent news.
I want to thank the board for that. I know
Our
you
begging came in.
advocated for that, and we're greatly appreciative of that
That's
in
great.
more ways than one. It will help to ensure that work's getting done on time, and that we can tackle some initiatives that we have in the wings.
Everybody
and-
says you're doing a good job, too.
Yep.
The new inspector?
And again, just to be clear, it wasn't for additional hours, it was just to keep to
The hours that were
maintain the
there.
hours that we have. And even if we have to look at that on a year-to-year basis, that's okay. The prospects for next year and the workload that we're gonna have, and the permitting that appears to be coming down the pike, certainly justifies the need for that. So I just wanted to comment on that first. The second, the easiest way to talk about my department is to talk about the number of permits and the fees received relative to those permits. So far for this fiscal year, we are on par to at least meet, if not exceed, the number of permits and the fees that we received last year. Currently, with 3 months left in the year, I think you have a report that I submitted that was done on February 14th. In anticipate, I was supposed to be here, I think, sometime around then, and we've just somehow gotten to March 10th or 11th, and here we are. So I've updated that a little bit. So the total fees to date since July 1st are $501,838. So it would take another $172,000 to match what we did last year. I firmly believe we're on track to do that. The Milton Hospice, they submitted their full application for a permit. The
we've done the review on that project. The permit is pretty much ready to issue. There are some punch list items that they have to address, and so I called the supervisor of that company to let her know that basically we're ready to issue that permit. And she then informed me that there's been a delay in their State Department of Health approval for that project, but probably just a couple of weeks. So I still do anticipate issuing this permit.
When are they anticipating breaking ground?
It looks like now end of April, I would say, end of April, beginning of May. And then just recently, Curry College was given a permit for their, for the foundation only of their 168-bed dormitory. They have not yet submitted for the remainder of that project. It's still being designed and finalized, but I do expect that to be filed for soon. Projected construction costs on that, it's about a $14 million project in that project alone. Whether it happens in this fiscal year or just after the first of the next fiscal year, projected about $180,000 in fees on that project alone.
Including the permit, including the foundation?
No, the foundation was already issued, so that was $21,000 worth of fee that we've collected this year. The other spike that we had this year was 50 Elliott Street. So aside from that, you know, we've issued total of 793 building permits so far this year, with 3 months left to go, with 1/4 of the year left to go. So,
and what was it this time last year?
This time last year, well, the total for the year was 1,124. So we have about another 300 to go to match that.
Are you on par for that?
We're on par for that, absolutely. So all of this is indicative of not just a healthy economy in Milton, but a healthy regional economy.
Joe, do you think having your new inspector, is that allowing more permits to get out the door faster?
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because it enables me to focus my time on the review. It takes me out of the field so much. And I'm able to focus more on that.
And you need to spend a lot of time on these big projects.
Yes, the
review that are coming in.
The review is important to us. Our approach on issuing building permits and doing inspections is that we focus a lot on the review, so that when the construction starts, there's no delays when we go out to do inspections in the field. And that, I think, a lot of other cities and towns do it a little bit backwards, and they skimp a little bit on the review. And I think that's detrimental to them, because problems get discovered out in the field after the project has started. So,
well, I have to admit one thing, that that was one of the things that I heard at the beginning, that you were a little stringent with and strict on the initial approval of the permit.
Right.
But then when you explained it, it makes sense, because a lot of developers had come to me and said, you know, when Joe Prondak issues a permit, there is no questions when construction starts then. Everybody knows exactly where they are and how to go ahead and build it, hopefully. First is, like you said, issuing the permit on half-reviewed plans and then making changes in the field, which is very difficult and very costly to the developer. So I think you're on the right approach.
Yep. And there, as construction goes, there are always unforeseen circumstances. There can always be changes that need to be made in the field, but at least we have a basis. When the permit gets issued, we have a solid footing to work from,
right?
So to speak.
No pun intended.
No pun intended, exactly. And then the second or the third piece that I'd just like to comment on, and that is the online permitting, which has been a long, painstaking development process. I have a launch date of next Monday. We had our final staff training today, so we're going to have a test site that we'll be basically playing with all our staff over the next week, and barring any unforeseen tragedies, we're going to open it up for online permitting.
And people will be able to online in the office too if they want to.
Yeah, we have a terminal set up right at the counter. They could even use the library if they wanted to, if they didn't have a computer at home, and because they know the library's open.
Yeah. So will you accept a paper application, or
the goal is eventually to be 100% online. When we take a paper application, we're going to have to physically put it in or help the person put it into the system. So there's going to be a steep learning curve, but the goal is to be 100% online.
Great.
Down the road, we're just going to have to let that play out on its own and see how steep that curve is.
Is it a user-friendly application?
I believe it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the state application.
Yeah.
And that's what all of these permitting companies basically do. They take the state application. There's really no other way to do it. You have to take the state application.
Yeah.
What we do is we've gone in and we've minimized, we have the ability to minimize the mandatory fields. For example, if you're doing a roof, there's no reason for you to tell us what the setbacks are for the building.
Correct.
So we've looked at a lot of that unnecessary information and taken away the mandatory requirement in the computer program.
I think one of the main things, and it happened in Boston, like Boston is all automated now. Yeah, a lot of people couldn't use the computers, and so a lot of unpermitted work was going on.
Correct.
Because people didn't want to deal with the hassle of it.
Right.
We don't want to dissuade people from going into your office and filling out a simple form online.
Yep, and we're aware of that, and I also, I use the Boston system, so I know there's a potential for that, to scare people away.
Right.
So I believe we have one of the friendliest systems available out there, and, you know, we're gonna work to make sure.
And you'll have your counter help ready to help somebody who
Yeah, I mean, they're ready now.
is
We've-
not
We've had a
tech savvy.
version of online.
That is important.
Yeah, and we want to be able to clearly show people that once you get over the curve, this is going to be easier for you down the road.
Right.
And I think we've got the right system to do that.
How are you going to handle plans?
Plans right now, there needs to be a paper set that goes back into the field. So they're going to have to bring in a paper set, at least one that we can put our stamp on it to say, yep, this is the plan that was reviewed, and this is the plan that's in the field. Our own computer system, this online software that we've purchased, no matter who we purchase it from, there is storage issues. So if we're taking in tons of plans and tons of backup documents for permits, we don't want to overload our system, or we don't want to overload the system that we purchased. So to cut to the chase on that one is, most of the large plans, we will either have the applicant submit them electronically and we'll burn them to a disk for the time being, or they will submit it, one paper set and one set on a disk. But I've been talking with Jim Scroy and Rob Mallett about an overall plan. This is an issue that we have to address kind of globally within the town, especially.
Be it offsite storage or something.
Yeah, especially with DPW is going heavily into the GIS, and that takes up a lot of space. And my understanding from Jim Scroy, it's not just the space that it takes, but the backup that's required for it, and that's almost doubles and sometimes triples your storage from what storage needs. So for the time being, taking plans on a CD is certainly much more efficient than taking a roll of plans that's
Takes up less space,
yeah,
certainly.
yeah, and that's really, I mean, we are at, our file storage is maxed out, so we've got to do all we can to limit how much paper we take in, and this is certainly a step in the right direction.
Great.
Okay, very good.
So I think that's sums it up for now.
Okay, Joe, well, good job. We're hearing great reports about your department.
Yeah, and thanks again for the help on the
Not a
extra
problem.
hours.
Glad to be able to do it.
That was important.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Joe, thanks. Did I miss anything on
I
this
don't think so.
agenda tonight? I don't think so.
No, I think you had everything.
Okay. All right, so I'll make a motion to enter executive session to discuss litigation strategy with respect to the property at 131 Elliott Street, believing that having this conversation in open session would have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the board, and to return to open session to adjourn.
Second.
Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Hurley?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen, yes. We're in executive session.